welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. We've got the full crew here today. I'm your host. My name is Brian Vitale. Joining me, we have Josh Torres.
In a really weird way, it's one of the biggest weeks in games for us. In a weird way.
Adam Vitale.
Hello.
James Galizio.
Hey, folks.
Chow Minwoo.
How's it going?
So, yep, I am back this week. I was not here last week, so I want to just, first of all, just say thank you to the crew here for covering all the news from the Nintendo Direct that we knew was coming, and of course, came right off the heels of the 2 straight weeks of Summer Games Fest, Xbox Showcase, PC Game Show, all that other stuff. We've gone through it. So, finally, kind of a week of normalcy, back in a way, like back to the normal rise and grind. But like Josh kind of said, it's, it doesn't really slow down. We've had a lot of new releases to talk about. While I wasn't here last week, I haven't listened to the podcast myself, but I looked at the notes and you guys talked a little bit about Shadow of the Erdtree, which a lot of people are still working through. I'm currently trying to work my way to that. Of course, we've got the big new Final Fantasy XIV expansion. We'll be talking about that today. We have a couple of reviews for new games that have gone up this week that we've talked about. Coming out within a couple days of recording this, we have the newest English localized Kiseki or Trails entry, Trails Through Daybreak. We'll talk a little bit about that. So I say back to normalcy, but we still have plenty to talk about. But luckily on the news front, it's kind of back to a normal number of headlines. We have a couple smaller announcements, a couple dates, a couple sales updates. So I'm ready to go back to not the giant swath of things that we had over the last couple of months. So again, thank you, Josh and Adam and James and Chow, for all the work that you guys did last week while I wasn't here and the weeks prior with all the things that we had to cover throughout the month of June. This is our last recording in the first half of the year. So what a crazy first 6 months. We're recording this on June 29th. So next time we meet, we'll be officially on the downslope, heading towards Game of the Year time already. Our first thing that we have listed here to talk about is, of course, the Final Fantasy XIV expansion, Dawntrail. Our big 2 players here on the podcast to talk about that, of course, are James and Chow.
Yep.
I guess I'll hand it off to James first. So I, on the fringes, have seen people talk about the usual things that you see on an expansion launch, queue time, server issues. But it seems like it hasn't been quite too bad, and a lot of people have been working through it. I've seen a lot of people posting graphics comparisons or old cutscenes rendered in the new updated rendering. I've seen a couple of people talk about DPS queue times or things like that. So I'll hand it off to James first, and of course Chow can chime in and you guys can ping off each other. But how long has Dawntrail been? Like, how long have the servers been up at the time of recording? Like, has it been up 24 hours, 48 hours?
24 hours, probably.
No, it's been over 24 hours. It's been just about 31 hours because it went live at 2 a.m. yesterday.
And of course, this is the pre-access, which most people have, right? Is that?
Yeah, that's okay. How it works. Yeah. So about servers, I just logged in again about like 10 minutes ago, and I had less than 40 people in the queue to get in, and it was basically instant. So I'll just straight up say it's a non-issue.
Okay.
Technical stuff, like there's been a new graphics update. Like how big of a difference it makes really depends on where in the game you're looking, and also like time of day and stuff like that. One of the major changes is with the lighting and also like reflective surfaces, because now reflective surfaces just look a lot better across the board. Shadows are a bit improved, not as much as I would have hoped. I'll say that much, but it's a nice little update. I have heard that there have been some issues with specifically the Xbox version of the game having crashing problems now, so hopefully that gets fixed. But other than that, it's been on a technical side of things pretty okay.
I feel like it's like playing with like the G-shade filters back in the day when we were using that thing before it went into a malware kind of function.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the graphic update is fine. I think it looks great if you're going to like a bright place, but if you go to like a dark place, it's like some part doesn't really capture the lighting. Like there's like the new scenes, like in a very dark place in like kind of like the end of the original was it A Realm Reborn? That scene, it's like I wish I could get out the old lighting when it's a little bit darker and it just captures like a more darker mood of it. You know?
Yeah. But
No,
yeah,
but
besides
with the login queues not being as a disaster as they were in Endwalker, I know for Endwalker, as you know, someone that's like who doesn't really engage, or I don't play FF14, I don't really keep up with the community at that at all. But just from an outside perspective, obviously Endwalker was like the end of like the main saga that they built up since A Realm Reborn, and Dawntrail sort of like almost like soft reboot on like, hey, it's an entirely new adventure that you're embarking on this one. And I know a lot of people feel like, in a certain sense, that Endwalker was almost like the end game of the end game equivalent of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So a lot of people have been kind of apprehensive of what if they want to go on this with this new adventure again in FF14. Like I know a lot of people feel a little, in a sense, a little bit burnt out. It's like, hey, I feel like I got my closure with Endwalker. So how does the early parts of Dawntrail at this point feel? Like how can you address that?
so Dawntrail, I'll definitely say. I mean, they outright said that it wasn't going to be as action packed, wasn't going to be as climatic as Endwalker, especially coming right off it immediately, which just makes sense. I'd say that Dawntrail definitely doesn't really feel like it starts getting going until around right after the first trial fight, which is about what I expected.
How many hours
But
in it is that roughly?
um, it's gonna depend on the person, but I'd say at least like 10 to 15 hours for a normal player. Would
Oh,
you agree
okay.
with that, Chow?
I would say so. I mean, back then when in Endwalker, it takes pretty long to get to the first trial.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the story, it's not really hooking me in with the new characters, but I'll see. It's like was it Wu Lumat? It's like the new
Look,
kind of like the
Lamont, yeah.
new poster girl of this game. It's like, yeah, just not really hooking me in. Yeah, it feels just like a side character right now.
But
But
would you say, I guess, like inherently that like are people, and maybe even the dev team, are they expecting like lower numbers going into this expansion from Endwalker, or do
no,
you
I
think
think
that?
they expected that. It's
Uh-huh.
like after like something that big of scale, I think they were kind of forecasting, oh, FF14 is not gonna have the same Endwalker numbers, so I think it's expected, right? I
Well,
mean,
here's the funny thing about that. Like at the media tour, they said that, oh yeah, no, we have more subscribers now than we've ever had before. And if you look at the numbers on Steam, it seems like it's at least around the same as like Endwalker's launch, which again, to be fair, that isn't exactly a fair comparison because again, like the queues at Endwalker's launch, but
but they
the
also
game
have
seems
more
healthy.
servers. They
Yeah,
seem to have more servers too, so it won't
yeah.
be launching that Endwalker state, which is
Hmm.
disastrous. But I was willing to wait because I was so hyped for it. Right, this one's kind of like, yeah, I think the hype's over, but I'm still willing to give it a try to see where the story's headed. Right.
Okay, yeah. Have you guys been able to mess with any of the new classes they added, or any that heard anything about like this? Just the early impressions of the new classes they added.
So
I haven't messed with them yet just because I played around with them a bit during the media tour and I was like, these are neat. But going through the expansions MSQ, I wanted to do it on my main job just so I can get through this.
Yeah, so you can get at least some consistent parties at a timely basis.
look, once I beat the original game back in the day using it as a dragoon, I switched to a sage or a white mage, and I was like, these queues are instant. I am never going back. So that's kind of like my
It's
thing.
it's really funny because at least yesterday, and maybe there's still some of that today, there were people that were basically saying, hey, I'm a tank or I'm a healer. I'm going to put down on Party Finder that I'm willing to help you level up your new job to be able to play Dawntrail with it because the DPS queues for leveling queue got so high that you basically couldn't do it like in any reasonable time frame without basically being willing to pay like Gil to someone to basically act as your meal ticket.
Wow. And the two new classes, or was it two? It's like Viper and Pictomancer,
Yep,
right?
two DPS
Okay, yes.
classes.
So that's tough if it's like two of the same main role. Yeah, it's good luck to everyone out there who wants to give those a shot and want to make progress. It seems like, so there's like a really big locale change as well because Endwalker was obviously on the moon. That was the main motif, and that was a lot of where you explored in that expansion. This one is now like a more Caribbean sort of feel. It's like islands, tropical locale. Just kind of walk me through that whole shift, like how you guys felt about like just traveling to this just brand new like location, like just the visuals, the feel, the vibe. Like just walk me through that.
So the things that I remember is deserts, and you know what I hate the most in any setting? A
Hmm.
desert. But okay, so I think there was like a boat. You take a boat, and I think you kind of crash into like a tropical place, and then everyone's like trying to explain you like the politics behind the new land. I think that's how the story goes. Is that
Don't
what, James?
you don't crash. You don't crash.
I was trying to remember. Okay, maybe I was thinking the wrong scene then.
Okay,
Yeah,
and then so you end up on this island, like just obviously no spoilers, but just like the general gist of like, hey, what are we signing up for this?
it's not an island. Like you're just. It's an entirely new continent, and honestly, just reading the plot synopsis might raise some eyebrows. So you're on an expedition to the New World,
Oh, okay, okay,
uh, and it's very much like Latin America inspired. So
okay.
Are there
Like,
like local people there, or is it
yes,
uninhabited?
local people, yeah.
Okay.
So
Are they like the existing races, or are they a single race, or
It's multiple races. There's like one or two that are like reminiscent of races found elsewhere in the game, but a lot of them are also new.
gotcha? That's pretty neat.
Hmm.
Besides, like, just the main story thrust and the new classes, like, I know we've covered a little bit of this when we've covered the lead up to the expansion, but well, like any other like side social features, cosmetic features, things that people who aren't going immediately into the story or immediately trying to Pictomancer out to engage with in any way that the expansion's added.
the best thing they ever added is the dual die system for the glamour, which you can like
Mhm.
kind of back then you could dye a piece of gear, but it's like it probably died in like the area you didn't care about. It's like, oh, it's like that little braid that's in the part of clothing that you want to change the color, but it only changes the main body. But now it's like they have a dual dye system, so it can add a lot of customization all of a sudden, right? Obviously, it's not perfect because there's some of them. It's like, oh, there's a necklace. You dye the color. It's like, oh, it just dyed this tiny little beat in there, and you're like, what? That's it?
that's it. Yeah, get this 1 pixel in there. There you go. It's blue now. Thanks.
It's
Yeah, I've
like,
definitely seen a lot of people being like, "Hey, you sold us on these multiple die channels. It feels like we're being ripped off a bit here." But
Mhm.
So
but
they've
I
added
imagine.
guide channels to existing gear, or only new gear has it?
all the old gear has it, but it's like the change is not
Oh,
like
cool.
perfect, right? It's like some of the gears, like you wonder, it's like, oh, what is the point of this, right?
Yeah, I wonder if they'll improve upon that over time. Like, I'm sure maybe there's like I assume there's a large amount of gear to just like go back and add this whole new feature for. So I imagine there might have been some oversights or some like time limitations to like, hey, we have to like get through everything. So hopefully they go back and hopefully address some of the concerns.
Like I posted was a picture in our chat. It's like this costs like a uproar in the community right now. It's like there's like a little jacket and there's like a little braid that's part of the jacket, and they're like trying to dye it, and it just dyes that tiny little beat that's part of the braid of the jacket.
The,
So
so just within like the community circles that you hang out with for FF14, well, what's kind of the general first impressions that you hear from people just going to Dawntrail?
the
Other than
prologue is
be
ass. If you could get through the prologue, it picks up from there, and then you might pull all nighter. That's basically
I
what
love
they
how
said.
unfiltered Chow is. He's like, new
yeah,
expansion, prologue is
I love it.
ass.
I love it.
yeah. I will say that I think that it's maybe a little unfair to ask that when it's been like for most people
Right.
just about a day.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So it's like
Yeah.
it's still a little too soon to say for sure what the general consensus is and will be.
Mhm. Okay.
And it's hard to judge. Like you talk about the opening being slow. the pacing of a chapter of the story that you haven't finished yet, or that is many hours long, and like potentially the slower pace of the opening chapter serves a larger purpose once you've covered more ground in terms of the narrative. So
I
I
think
agree
it's a
with you that you.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I think it was just like a problem with most games. Like when you start a new chapter, it's like they have to set the world building, and they're trying to feed you all this information. And whether that lands or not, it's like it doesn't land a lot of times. Like when you're trying to learn new terminology, right?
Well, but the thing is, like, I think when James and Adam were at Summer Games Fest, I talked about the ending of the most recent expansion in Guild Wars, and I feel like they have the opposite problem where they go too big too fast, and none of it, it all feels like fake. Like you don't, there's no investment, there's no pacing, and it just feels like flimsy. And I'm like, I kind of wish it was slower at times. So I kind of appreciate when stories can scale down. And I've talked about this previously on the podcast. So I don't mean to be too redundant, but I think one of the best like exemplary talents that a good writer can have is to take a story the scope of Endwalker and then add a chapter where they've de-scoped it a bit, where not everything has to be bigger than what came before it and then bigger than what came before it. If you can make the climax something more personal, smaller scale, local politics, whatever you want to call it, and not world-ending nukes or whatever you want to call it, like that can be a really compelling story. And it'll be interesting to see if how high does Dawntrail go at its climax? Does it keep it smaller? Does it go bigger? Because on their own, neither one of those is inherently good or bad. Just execution is key, right? So I'm eager to follow up with you guys once you finish, whether it's next week or in months, who knows. Well, I guess remind me of this. Previous expansions, they would have like their core expansion story, and then they'd have like the point 1, point 2, point 3 follow up. Is that going to be the same like template going forward? Have they said, or is it going to be like a different paradigm?
We don't know, because
know.
they didn't do that for Endwalker, and the end result was that the patch storyline for Endwalker was very hit or miss, depending on who you asked. They might be back to doing it with Dawntrail, but it's too early to say. For one, because I haven't seen the end of the story, and just don't know.
I know there's some people that made it to level 100. One of the most funniest thing is there's a fate boss, and nobody could get to it because you had to beat the story to unlock flying. And so there's only one person who's able to access it because that's the only person that can fly. So it's just kind of hilarious, like how it kind of tells
Very dumb question. Are there regions of the map that you can only get to on a flying mount, and you can only access a flying mount once you beat the story?
Yeah. So
I think I know that's very core Final Fantasy probably, but I didn't know that. I kind of like that in principle, though. Gives you a reason to revisit areas.
It's just like they want you to explore the area in the first time, right? So it's like if you just kind of fly through, you're not going to enjoy the scenery or know what's going on in the locales, right? So I know why they did it in the first place, but I just find it funny that only one person is at that location right now, which is kind of funny.
He's like, "Why is no one helping me?" Because we didn't zero life the story or whatever. So obviously we'll have future conversations about Dawntrail because you just now started. Any final thoughts, like in our very first initial 1 or 2 day experience with the game, with the expansion?
Sage is looking good so far. I'm having a blast with Sage again. I mean, the thing is with this game is like I had to spend like 2 hours retooling my entire skill kit because when I reformatted the computer, I forgot to keep my keybinds. So I was like, oh shit. So I've been like spending like hours retweaking my UI, so I didn't really fully get to enjoy to play this as much as I hoped. But I'll get to it. At least that's what I'll do.
Yeah, he'll have like a playtime. It's like 200 hours, 150 of that was tweaking keybinds.
Hey, it takes a lot of time. It's very important. Getting your
I mean,
keybinds
I
right.
don't blame you. Yeah, it's like it really sucks that you because I imagine for that time of like games complexity, just like the way that you control it. Yeah, I'd be annoyed too.
I can't imagine. It's like, okay, James, you did all those media tours, right?
Yeah, I did the one.
It's like, how is it like when you play in a media tour? Did you have to use their keybinds, or did you actually spend like enough time to like retool your own keybinds? Because I am
I
very
retooled my keybinds.
okay. And did you what is their default keybind like? Because I know the default keybind in this game, I don't like it at all. It's like they're trying to like cater to the WoW audience and have to like manually set it to like legacy mode to how it was originally made. This kind of thing.
When they
James?
do the default keybinds at like a demo event, do they assume keyboard and mouse or controller or either way? Just curious.
They had either way.
I gotcha. Just because I'm gonna judge you, what do you guys use?
Uh, I use a keyboard and mouse. I need to get a new MMO mouse because I use the Logitech G600 and they don't make those anymore.
I think I could play better on DPS using an actual controller, but on healer, it's like keyboard and mouse all the way, right? That's kind of like the go-to. Because I don't know, when you play on a controller, right? When you're doing a DPS class, it feels like you're just playing like a fighting game with your combo rotation in a way. But if you're playing on keyboard, it's a little different in my opinion, right? And I don't use an MMO mouse. I only have like 2 extra buttons, so sometimes you just kind of run out of buttons. Like, where the hell do I press all these keys, right? And
My
I think
preference is to have a mouse with like 2 buttons on the side, not like the full 16.
yeah,
To me,
I
that's
use
too
the 2
many.
buttons on the side as well. So what I do is to get
Yeah.
extra keys, it's like I hold the shift button pressing those 2 keys, or holding control pressing the 2 button mouse to get extra keys. And whatever in my fingers, I can't reach past the 6 button in my finger, or it's very awkwardly pressing anything past number 6. So I only keep
Yeah,
on to the first 5 numbers, right?
whenever there's something default keybind of 5 to 5 through 0, I just change that usually, depending on the game, to like shift 1 through 5. That way I can I'll reach it with my left hand.
You need to get those foot pedals so you have more buttons as well. Might as well
There
make
you
it an
go.
all body experience.
One of the best players, uh, was it that does all the Palace of the Dead content? He plays completely on keyboard. This is
Oh
Andros
yeah.
Andros Demonic. He used like the camera to like keyboard to change the camera, everything on keyboard. I'm like asking, is this how you play? It's like, yeah, this is what I used to, and I stuck with it. I don't play with controller. I don't play with anything. Just pure mouse. I mean, pure keyboard, no mouse. Right?
What a god.
Yeah, anything works.
Well, thank you, James and Chow, for giving us initial look in at the status of the new Final Fantasy XIV expansion Dawntrail, the future of the game going forwards. We will have plenty of opportunities, especially with post patches as you guys finish the story, etc., to revisit the conversation.
I know it's not much to like talk about, but it's still pretty early. I mean, the game just came out yesterday, so it's
Oh,
not
that's
Yeah,
fine.
it's not enough to leave
totally
like a
makes
big
sense.
impression,
Yeah.
right?
There's like very expected because it's like an MMO early release.
The second game we have here was a game that was announced officially for English localization about exactly a year ago at Anime Expo last year, 2023. And that is an official English release for the visual novel Tsukihime, or the remake of it, the remaster of it, A Piece of Blue Grass Moon. So that finally came out in English. Or did it come out in English, Josh? Or is it just the embargo's up and it's coming out in a
It
couple
came
days?
out.
It came out.
Okay, it is out.
Yeah.
So Josh did put up a review for Tsukihime, and of course, for the Type Moon fans and audience, this is kind of an area where I'm on the fringe, but I've seen the excitement that Josh and Chow and James and others have put to a release like this, and of course, like the upcoming official Fate English localization and things like that. So for Tsukihime, if it's out, it's in English officially. You put up a review for it. Your review is pretty glowing and very like thorough and extensive. But here's your chance to speak to it here in more open terms.
Yeah,
How is
I'd say, well, for you, Brian, I think you're more into Type Moon than the average regular citizen. You did watch like a full season of like a Fate. Forgot which one.
Mhm.
Um,
The original, the
yeah.
Fate, not Zero, not Bladeworks.
I was talking to a friend yesterday, and it's like, what is a normal anime you recommend a normie to watch? Never Fate, not Fate.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if that's kind of too intense for the first exposure, but it is what it is.
So Josh, tee it
Yeah,
up for us for
yeah,
those that either forget, like me, what the
right.
previous discussion was, or people who might be new listeners to the podcast. So, Tsukihime was a visual novel that was released originally a long time ago, was eventually remastered, never officially available in English, is now available in English in a certain format. Just kind of tee us
Yeah.
up the
So
lineage of it.
so like this is a very very important release in the West. It's been a really really long time coming for a lot of people. So Tsukihime was originally but was ostensibly Type Moon's first visual novel that they ever released. Kind of like their first game that they ever released officially. It was released at a comic market a long time ago, the year 2000, and this was like when still Type Moon was still like a Dojin circle, very like not even like an official company yet. And it did very very well for the people who were able to like, play the original release. It didn't really get like an international presence at all outside of Japan until a fan translation group named Hollow Moon way back when released an
I
English patch for it, and for a lot of people internationally, this is their first entry point into Type Moon anything. This is how they got introduced to Type Moon, like the very very early international Type Moon fans. It was probably because of Hollow Moon's translation of the original Tsukihime visual novel. Go for it, Chow.
I was gonna say I follow that translation group when they first started. They actually merged with this other group called Mirror Moon, was it?
Mhm, yeah,
It's like, and they
yeah.
also did like, remember that Xenogears of Korea that game that I talked about,
Yes, I remember
Arcturus?
you talking about that.
They
Yeah.
actually were working an English patch on it, but they just gave up because the script was too much for them.
Yeah.
Uh,
So yeah,
yeah,
through the efforts of Hollow Moon and Mirror Moon, that like it's not crazy to say that through them, they were like the first spark of like international presence of Type Moon anywhere in the like out in the world outside of Japan. So like, and I'm not going to say that a lot of like people who back then like played it like the original Tsukihime, but that's how it got its uh presence
not
first
on word of
known.
mouth. People
Yeah, through
just
word
kind
of
of
mouth.
told,
Yeah,
yeah, people just told
yeah,
us like, "Hey, this game is so fucking epic," but it was only sold in like this Dojin circle, and now it
yeah.
becomes some weird collector's item that pawn shops in Japan are willing to pay thousands for it.
It was like that same legend or myth quality that like when Rondo of Blood Castlevania never got an official Western release, but people back then said like this Castlevania is so fucking sick,
Yeah,
but it's
it's
only in
so
Japan.
fucking good, and
It had that mythical quality. It's like
status.
man, people are saying like this thing's like amazing, and Rondo of Blood is
Wait,
awesome.
I didn't like. I've only played one Castlevania game, Symphony of the Night.
Mhm.
I've heard of Rondo of Blood as like a really good. I
It's like
forget what you call the
it's a real
classic.
prequel. The real
Yeah,
prequel.
like the what do you call the Castlevanias before Igavanias? Just classic Castlevania, like
Yeah,
that style of
usually,
game.
yeah, the
And I've
classic.
heard that Rondo of Blood is like one of the best examples of that. I didn't
Yeah,
realize it wasn't officially localized.
yeah, like yeah, back then, yeah, but it didn't get officially localized till much later officially.
We get the
Um, uh,
Super Nintendo version, which sucks in my opinion. It's like the level designs are terrible, and the last
yeah,
boss is god awful.
yeah. So you heard of it through word of mouth back then, but then it's even heightened even more because you don't have like access to it, easy access to it. So it's like, man, what is like what is Japan keeping from us?
It's like
That.
Final Fantasy Type Zero status. When it wasn't released in English,
Yeah.
it was a mythical game that's supposed to be god tier. When it's released in English, everyone hates it, and now it's not mythical
I mean,
anymore.
yeah, that didn't have in Rondo of Blood. Rondo of Blood still kept like people still really love Rondo of Blood. Maybe like to a lesser because now it's now known, but like yeah, but with Type Zero, that's completely 180. But yeah, Tsukihime had that appeal to it, and the really big thing that speaks out to like what kind of solidified Tsukihime and like what made it an iconic, almost legendary release is that back then, those like when it comes to Dojin releases, especially like visual, like digital visual novels, it's not to say that all of them are bad, like certainly not. But a lot of them focus on that romance quality of like the typical, hey, there's like these selection of girls,
They're
and you
more
go through
focused
the
on like
routes.
erotic elements
Yeah,
or
yeah,
like
you're going
romance
through the
or
routes to get to like the big sex scene pretty much for
yeah.
them, right? And it's a very standard romance. With Tsukihime, it's a more unconventional thing where there's still this selection of girls and you can go through their routes. And then since it's like a Dojin game back then, it had like hentai scenes to it. Not great hentai scenes, but that's how you sold your games back then. It's like if you didn't have those,
You can't
it'd be really
sell
tough
them.
sell, because
Yeah,
that
that's what they
was the
told them.
expected.
And they're like the
Uh,
worst thing that they included, to be honest. But
yeah,
it's like, yeah,
yeah.
getting rid of it, it makes the game a million times better.
Subsequent releases of Tsukihime, like released without the hentai scenes, and in this remake, they got rid of them, and it doesn't take away from the story, in my opinion. But the main appeal of Tsukihime was like, beyond just having these girls that like can go to the routes, it established like a whole like complex world, in this. Like it's like the author Nasu is very very big into world building. So like you play you have a main character that's not faceless. I think in the original one they didn't see his face, and then they eventually, like in other releases, Tsukihime, they finally had like a proper design for him. And in this remake, he also has a design.
I
The main
think
character.
I think you
Go
didn't
for
see
it.
his face until like they made the Melty Blood games, the
Yeah, I think so.
fan fighting game that somehow became official as time went on.
Yeah, yeah. So you play this character named Shiki, and the very first thing that establishes is established in this visual novel, both in the original and the remake, is he wakes up in a hospital. He learned that he got into like a really bad accident back then, and he now has like this ability to see lines throughout everything across the world. Like it just if it's a window, a roof, a bed, like he just has like these all these lines, like these cracks in them, and if he traces those lines, he can cut through them no matter what their mass density is, no matter what how big they are. So if he just like takes like a plastic knife and like traces those lines, he'll cut through them no matter what. And these lines like show up on people as well. So theoretically, if you were to trace all those lines on a person, he'll cut like cleanly through them. So, and then eventually in the prologue, he'll meet someone, a very familiar face in the Type Moon universe, who gives them these special glasses that like allow him to like no longer see these lines as long as he has those glasses on, and so forth. And then as you continue to learn more about Shiki, like once it like kind of fast forwards to the present day, he's being called back to his family mansion because his father died. So his younger sister is now the heir to the family. They like it's a very luxurious, family, very rich. It's like he's being called back to his family home, which is a mansion, and so forth. And then, as he's living his life, he meets this mysterious blonde woman. And I won't, go into like what exactly happens between the two, but it's a very, very intense first meeting between them. So you later learn that this woman's name is Arcuade, and uh, you learn that Arcuade is a vampire. And it's not just like your typical hey like vampire story of like, oh no, she's trying to suck my blood, or we have to take down like the vampire or so forth. Not quite that straightforward, because you start learning about like different kinds of vampires and vampire society. You learn terminology like dead apostles, ancestors, true ancestors. How does like a dead apostle, like, what's their role in society, but like what's their whole ecosystem between vampires and normal humans, and different ranks of like almost vampiredom almost. And it's very thoroughly established, explained to you. And Dasu loves his in-world terminology for this. So I think a lot of the interest around longtime Type Moon fans with this official English release of the Tsukihime remake is like, how will the English script adapt like those in-world terminologies to finally have like official English terms to like these long established things that were only released through fan translations before. That's like for long time Type Moon fans, it's a lot of the interest. And this remake is really, really interesting because it's split into two. So I talk a little bit about this in the review to kind of give context to it. But in the original 2000 version, year 2000 version of Tsukihime, there were 5 routes. There were the 2 main heroines, the aforementioned Arcuade and another heroine, CL. You learn more about her, and I'll talk a little bit about her later. And then there were 3 other routes. There was Akiha, which is Shiki's younger sister, and then there are 2 personal maids, Hisui and Kohaku. Um, so they established, they categorized this between near side and far side, which is referencing to the near side of the moon and the far side of the moon, kind of like that flowery terminology, because Tsukihime translates into moon princess, so it keeps up with that motif. The near side it consists of the Arcuade and Seal routes, because they're the 2 main heroines in the
And you're
original.
close to them. That's why it's called a near.
But they have like the most involved routes. They're like the 2 main heroines, and they're like the most substantial routes in terms of like story and developments and like scope of the story. And in a piece of Blue Glass Moon, that it only has these 2 routes between Arcuade and Seal, and the remake has 3 endings.
I know there's like people on
for that.
Twitter that complain to us like, "Oh, they're remaking this, and it's like you're ruining everything." It's like you didn't even play the original. Judging by reading this comment, they expanded a route that has
Yeah.
basically nothing into a whole game, basically.
So yeah, so this remake does a lot of like introduces a lot of new characters, and it really fleshes out their routes. So like Archivade has like a very like I'd say it's the intro route. Like you there's no way to like
You
go
can't
like
skip it. Like
yeah
you
you
have to
can't
beat the
yeah,
game first before you
right
can play a Seals route, which is
right you
I
have to
don't know if
do.
it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I
I
guess
think it's a
it's
good thing. So here's why. So Archivade route is very much like the intro route. You do that first, then that allows you to go to the seal route, and but only the seal normal ending route, and then you have to see that before you go to like the extra route for seal, which is kind of the quote unquote true route for seal. And you have to do this all sequentially. There's no way to like kind of do things out of order in it. So the reason why you want to do why it's done like this is because Seals route already employs a lot of the terminology and a lot of the in-world things that you learn through Arcuade's route, and and the way that it serves it to you is very much of the knowledge that hey, the player already knows this. You don't have to go learn about this again. While Arcuade's route is very more involved and in depth in explaining these terms to you, and it's more straightforward in that sense of like how the story developments are handled there. While Seals route is it's so Seals route is interesting in the remake because in the original Tsukihime, Seals route had like interesting bits about it in terms of like how Shiki develops in that route, but a lot of the events and one of the biggest criticisms about Seals route in the original is like it was almost like a clone of Arcuade's route in terms of like what happens and who are the involved characters. It almost feels like a clone of it. So there's nothing really exciting to look forward to because a lot of it like the characters that you meet and the things that happen are very much almost one to one to what you see in the Arcuade route, and so that's why the Steel route is very lacking in the original Tsukihime game. In the new version, there are some antagonists that are like one of the first antagonists that like show up, but how he's dealt with is different, and the context around him is different. But then there's a lot of more new characters in Seal's route that really branch it out from its own direction. That's almost a brand new route. Like it just like in terms of like what new events happen and what it decides to focus its script on. Like you learn more about the church in Seal's route, way more than it ever was touched upon in the original route, and it helps because there's like these new characters that are involved with that organization,
and that's how you
uh,
became a Mario fan.
and Mario is fucking awesome. There's this new character named Mario in the remake. He's fucking awesome, and people will love him. And then but a lot of like but there's still some events from the original Seals route that were never like that made it special in the original game. That's still preserved in an interesting way in the remake and so forth. So and Tsukihime, I don't want to go too long into like this context, but it's important to establish like all this kind of info going in. Um, it's like the release of the Tsukihime remake in Japan 3 years ago was also remarkable because it was the first brand new visual novel coming from Type Moon after the release of Fate Grand Order in 2015 in Japan. It was the first like new thing that they ever worked on after Fate Go because up until then, um, it was just their focus was on Fate Grand Order
It was meme
content.
upon. I think they announced it too early, and people memed it. Like FF7's like, what will come first, the Final Fantasy 7 remake or this game? And people just
I
kept
know, like Hollow Knight Silksong, people are complaining. Look, the Tsukihime remake was first announced in 2008. It didn't come out till 2021. All right, I don't want to hear any complaining about where's this
Silk
game? I've been
Zone.
waiting for this game 3 to 4 years. I'm like, motherfucker.
You haven't
Think
been
about
waiting.
think about how long. Yeah, that's nothing compared to how long people waited for the Tsukihime remake. You know, so it was it was pretty much accepted as like shovelware or abandonware like
Yeah, I
five
thought it was
years
never gonna
after
be
it's
real.
that was a very common sentiment, and even Nasu like admitted like the reason Tsukihime remake took so long was because he was busy with Fate Go, but on the flip side, Fate Go being so successful directly led to like a really, really high quality um release for the Tsukihime remake. As much as people want to call me out on it and like have some issue with the terminology, the Tsukihime remake is as close as you're gonna get to like what a AAA visual novel would entail. Like when you think about the production values, about the unique artwork, all the fully voiced script, and just the overall presentation, it's like on another level compared to most visual novels. I think Witch on the Holy Night is the only thing that
Yeah,
really
I feel the same about Witch of the Holy Night. This is a AAA visual novel, even though visual novels or kinetic novels, whatever you want to call
yeah.
it.
Mhm.
No.
Yeah. Yeah.
This
So,
isn't
I
here or
mean,
there, but I was just checking because I was curious. You know
yeah.
what else was announced in 2008 technically and still hasn't come out?
You can
I
nuke
don't.
them forever.
Beyond Good
Beyond
and
Good and
Evil
Evil
2.
Oh
Yes.
my god!
Yeah.
Wait, really? Region 2 was announced that?
Yeah, it was
Oh,
announced
since
at UB
2008?
Days 2008, and then they didn't say anything about it until it was like re-revealed in 2017, and then
Oh
now
my!
it's
I didn't even know it was
that's
yeah,
actually
revealed that.
semi-relevant
Huh,
because the
interesting.
remaster to the original game either just came out or is just about to come out, and apparently they add like a tiny bit of new context there that is going to link to the sequel, which is still definitely happening. They even said that on Twitter. It's still definitely happening. But
That's
anyways,
weird. Yeah.
uh,
Okay.
Is it
Thanks for
still
the
a
trivia.
prequel or is it like an actual sequel now?
I
Because
have
I
no idea. Who
remember when they,
knows?
because I remember when they fully re-revealed like Beyond Good and Evil 2. It's like, wait, you're making a prequel? The whole reason people wanted a sequel is because there was a cliffhanger. You assholes!
Uh,
That sounds terrible.
that's yeah. I didn't even know that was like first mentioned in 2008. That's funny. But so yeah, apart from like the Tsukihime remake, coming out after Fate Go, because Witch on the Holy Night was the release that we got was a remaster of it, and it was pretty much one to one to what they released in 2012 before Fate Go came out, and just had voice acting in it, and that was like really the only change. So so it was cool seeing this. And going back to what I said, like this is going to be split up into two parts, because in the original release of the Tsukihime remake, if you unlocked all the endings and all the bad endings, and I don't know if you had to 100% see all the scenes, but that unlocked the secret movie that announced the second part of the Tsukihime remake, The Other Side of Red Garden, which will include the Far Side route through the Sakiha, Hisui, and Kohaku. And they're also teasing a possible fourth route in it. We don't know, but we know that during the development of Tsukihime, there's a fourth.
It's like that
There's
classmate that you
yes,
go in with,
yeah,
with your buddy,
Satsuki,
that girl.
yeah, Satsuki.
Yeah.
So yeah, so everyone's wondering if the next part will finally have the long canceled Satsuki route, which a lot of people kind of are very much excited for, because she's a very interesting character, but this never really explored because they didn't make a route for her. So, so reviewing a piece of Blue Glass Moon for me was really really important, because I know this context going in. I know a lot of people around the world have been waiting for this unofficial English release of this story for so long, and it's just like it's one of those review assignments that you really have to think hard about on like
Yeah,
how
to
am I
compare
gonna
to it.
approach this, like because I know this is important for so many people, for and they've been waiting for so long for this. So I really wanted to really go the extra mile for this review. Like James gave me this code for assignment like barely last Thursday night. I'm like, oh my god! And this is
Oh, so you just
and he told
binged
me
through
the
it.
embargo. And he told me the embargo. I'm like, okay, all right. I'll see what I can
Yeah.
do. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
for some context, because Aniplex has only really now been starting to like do more proper like major releases. Like they've had their like VN like brand for a couple of years now, but they've like between this, obviously Fate Stay Night coming up, and also like I think they're doing the 100 line. They've been like ramping things up. We didn't really have a consistent PR contact for Mihoyo. Like we had a contact,
But we never got
but
anything in the end.
yeah,
So the copy
so,
that we reviewed is actually bought with our own money. So
yeah. Thankfully now I don't foresee that being a problem, because inside baseball they're using the one PR company that no, not one PR, but they're using a PR company that pretty much everyone in the industry uses now. So it's like, okay, that's consistent at least.
Yeah, so hopefully, it'll be smooth sailing going forward. But yeah, I really wanted to make sure, hey, I want 100% this. I want to make sure check up on some stuff that I know a lot of people will have questions on. Like for example, I unlocked the secret movie in the English release before the embargo just to make sure, hey, did they like translate the text in it? Did it have the English logo? And it's like yes. So judging by like the English having the English text and logo in that secret movie that teases the sequel, I think it's safe to say that they are going to localize the other side of Red Garden, internationally. Now, this makes the question is like, is this going to be a worldwide release? That's the big question on everyone's mind right now because we haven't had any news updates on the other side of Red Garden in Japan ever since Tsukihime, the remake of Tsukihime released there 3 years ago, and that's the only news they ever gotten after outside of that, and Nasu has been silent for very very
Imagine
long
that's
on
why he was
this.
silent for so long. 'Cause he was trying
Imagine
to make a worldwide release all on the same day. Can you imagine?
that'd be
Honey
crazy. Like
Moon
I
visual
would
novel
be.
comes out faster than the Falcon game on day one.
Look, my mind would be blown if the other side of Red Garden is a worldwide release. That's like something that, like, once again, it seems unthinkable. But then again, the localizations of Witch and the Holy Knight and the Tsukihime remake were unthinkable ones. So
Yeah,
it feels like anything can happen.
I feel like at this point that it's like at least a 50-50 shot, which
Yeah.
is insane to think.
Yeah, which is crazy.
I would laugh so hard. That's why he went radio science. Because he was trying to work on a worldwide release all at the same time.
That'd be something. So we'll see. We'll see what further developments they're gonna announce for that. So I'm not gonna get my hopes up, but if it does happen, I will scream. um, so and then a lot of people are wondering, just like generally, how did the English script turn out? Because I know I'm aware that there's been a previous fan translation of the Tsukihime remake before, and I read a little bit of it, and but I just like I know there's an official English release coming.
Yeah,
I'll wait
I
for that.
stopped playing it for the same reason. I was like, oh yeah, it's like I got pretty far in this, but official one. I'm just gonna drop this and wait for the official one.
Yeah. And I was happy to report that, like, hey, the official English translation for this is like really really good. It's incredible. Like they did such a good job just kind of preserving the tone, spirit, and feel of that original script that was authored by Nasu. They're like a lot of the charm in Nasu's writing is especially in critical moments where he messes around with the script's presentation and the text itself. So, for example, when you first meet Archivate for the first time, very, very, very early into the game, so this isn't really spoilers, but like how there's a certain point where there's a deliberate font change due to what's happening in the story, and that's reflected both in the Japanese script and it's also preserved in the English script where there's a very noticeable font change. And then there's a certain point where Shiki's thoughts are kind of getting mumbled and jumbled through it, and how that's reflected through the English text presentation is at some point there are some lines that are presented in reverse. So if you want to know what Shiki is saying, you have to like deliberately like read the text that was presented all in reverse. So you're like kind of going from right to left, and the letters are from right to left, and like making up the words, and you're like, that's really fucking cool how they did that, you know. And um and, and there are certain things that they do with the English, typesetting in terms of very deliberate italic usage for certain key terms and moments to really really nail home um the really intense situation of some scenes, because the really nice cool thing about Tsukihime is like, there's a horror element to it, because as Shiki's learning about vampires for the first time and how there's like these been weird serial murders happening around this city that he lives in. Like there's a real sort of an intensity and horror element to the whole mystery surrounding just like this whole underworld that he's not aware of. Were you gonna say,
I just
Chad?
find it really funny. I was playing the fighting game because that's how I started with the Fate
Yeah,
franchise. I
yeah,
started with the Melted Blood, right? And there's Shiki that's playable in there, and he's pretty badass, right?
right.
In it, right? But when you're playing this visual novel, when you make the poor choices, you get killed for the dumbest things. It's
Yeah.
kind of funny. It makes him look so incompetent, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's just that it was just really heartwarming and really just it is like a noticeable step up from like what they released with Witch on the Holy Night, which on the Holy Night is
The script was
it's
fine, but it
okay,
had
it's fine.
typos. It had
Yeah,
typos and like stuff, and some characters were like misgendered. It's like he instead of calling it she. It's like it
yeah,
happens.
yeah.
But it's like the
It
script is
does.
massive, so it's like you kind of let it go. But
It's like one of those things. Like you could definitely see there's a room for improvement here. And I know the Steam release, they kind of polished it up, and then I think that later down the line they released a patch for the console version. But it didn't release in the greatest state. There were
Do you
just like
think
like you said, some really embarrassing.
do you think now that there's like I forget exactly what it was, but it was like a couple of months ago there was like some sort of Japanese government body that like officially recognized like Hepburn romanizations. Do you think we're finally not going to have to worry about their decisions for how to romanize stuff being weird?
I wonder. I have no idea. I guess I'll see what happens with the Fate Stay Night remastered script, right? Because we will have the whole Altria Artoria thing. Like, what are they gonna decide on there? Um, it's gonna be. I don't know. I have no idea, to be honest. But I think I'm thinking about the romanizations of some names in this with the Tsukihime remake, and I think all the core main cast and the side cast is fine. I think there's like some names in like the in-world text, like when they're like mentioning like church members, for example. Like I know one of the very specific ones for like Type Moon people, and I recognize this right away because I have brain rot, so I know a good amount of like Type Moon stuff. Is like when they were listing off some church members, and one of them was Kiara Kiss Yoin, Kissyoin. So in the original, um, like, the original like way you say these names, it's like Kishoin. And the way they romanize this, I was like, that's really weird. I'm like, why did they do this? And then I did some like third party research, right? I was like, I had to like I was thinking I was like, okay, there's a Kiara equivalent in Fate, and her last name is Seshoin, but I know but in Fate Go, how did they romanize it in Fate Go? And sure enough, they romanized as Sesyoin, so Sessyoin. I'm like, oh, they did it to remain consistency with how the Fate Go romanization did it.
I know
It's
people.
like
I'm not biggest fan of the Fate Go romanization, but hey, better keep things consistent, right?
it's one of those things that like I don't think like like normal people would like see this, but like I just saw it. I'm like, okay, wait, there's something in my brain that says I should look into this right away. So it's just like things like that that like I just like looked out for. It's like it was a lot of reading, but it was a really just fun thing to like kind of just see firsthand because when the review embargo went up, and then we got a really strong response from a lot of people on socials about it. I got obviously an avalanche of questions from Type Moon fans around the world. Just like I know they had a lot of questions about like how did the English script turn out? How did they reflect this in the script? Because there's like a lot of like certain things about the Japanese script, like how do you translate that into English? Because some of it is like borderline untranslatable in a sense. Like for example, I won't get into the specifics on how on the story details for this, but there are two characters that have very similar names, and the way that they say it in the how you would say it in English, it's like you would still say it the same way, but how they're written in Japanese are
It's still
different.
different, yeah.
Yeah. So how do they reflect that in the English script? And then it's like just knowing, like, having answers to that and knowing those questions. It's like I know that's really important for like Type Moon fans. So like I was like, for a good chunk of that day, like I just kind of sat down and just like answered questions from like Type Moon communities and Tsukihime fans. Just asking, just having questions about like, okay, how did they do this thing official translation? I'm like, okay, instead of saying just go buy it and find out, because I know there's I think it's important for like just people to have instant answers right away, so at least they feel reassured that like the English team did a really great job. Just having answers from them right away is like I think that's a more effective way of like giving them confidence in the work that they did instead of like turning them away and saying, "Hey, just go buy it and find out for yourself." So
Did they just like capitalize the name? Is that what they did?
they
Or did
did no, they
italicize
did
it?
yeah, they did italics for it.
Okay.
They didn't do all caps for that specific name, which for a lot of Type Move fans, like, oh, how am I gonna get used to that? I was so used to the all caps, all these years, and that all caps was established from like the English fandom at the time through like the fan translations
Yeah,
back
because
then.
there's no way to explain it in English. I think they use the same trope in was it the Garden of Sinners? There's a girl named Shiki, I guess, and they just had kind of like the same thing.
Yeah. So yeah. So I was just really happy to report that, hey, this was like a really like arguably the best visual novel release of the year. But I don't know like the what the competitors are. I'm sure will have been a lot of like, really strong visual novels this year. But this one just is like just on another level in terms of like the quality, the English script, the overall presentation. Just a beautiful game from top to bottom. Just and I know like there's some um concerns about like the English font that they used. And honestly, like when I first saw like the English font, like I wasn't too fond of like it being kind of like more wide and almost bubbly at first. But it actually really is easy on the eye. Well, was easy on the eyes for me in the long run. Like when I was reading for like 5 to 6 hours straight, like that English font, I was really appreciative because it was very easy on the eyes to just read and like digest information. Like I didn't really have like heavy eye sheen on it, which is like my main complaint with the translation that came out for the remake, several years back of they did a good job with the like that they were fans of it and they did a good job of like adapting the script in the limited resources that they had. But the font typesetting for it, I wasn't really a fan of because like I felt it was too heavy on my eyes for extended reading sessions. While on this was very like easy on my eyes.
So, which version did you play again? Was it the PS5
I
version
did
or
I did the PlayStation 5 version. Here's a weird thing. Like before the English release came out, the social media for Tsukihime came out and said, "Hey, there'll be alterations to the PlayStation version of the game in terms of like its physical art book, and I assume the digital art book as well." So not anything in the game itself, but in the art book that comes with the game, whether physical or digital, depending on what you got, there'll be an alteration for like 1 or 2 pages and then and then people have come out and have shown like the censorship on that character. I can't say because it's a big spoiler. There's a very big spoiler character.
I can guess what it is. This character is completely naked in the.
Yeah, in the original, and then I think the Switch version's art book is I think unaltered.
But
For that.
don't be raising your fitch for because she's naked in game. So it's
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So like
Yeah, I remember that, like from a couple weeks ago, where they said all console versions of the game are uncensored, but the
right.
physical
It's a weird
media.
thing to censor, really.
It's so
Right.
weird because again, like Aniplex they're Sony, they're owned by Sony.
Yeah.
Why do you?
It is a weird policy.
But it's owned by Sony Music, is it? It's like a different division of Sony, was it? Is that how it goes?
I forgot. It's definitely not like the PlayStation brand Sony. Not that division, but it's still within the Sony corporation
Yeah, it's
itself.
very confusing.
Yeah. But in game, nothing is censored in game. For the PlayStation version, like this character shows up in the game. That art has been not censored. It's an unedited. So people who are just playing it for the game itself and not necessarily looking at the art book, everything is fine in there. Nothing's been taken out in that aspect, and I can confirm that. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. So. So I mean, yeah, I was just really happy with Tsukihime's official English release. It was I hope people have as much fun reading it as I did, and hopefully we all get to scream together when the other side of Red Garden somehow gets announced for worldwide release simultaneously. If it does.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you a question. What do you think is gonna come first? A PC port of this game or Red Garden first?
I think a
A
PC,
PC
port
version.
would be, yeah,
Yeah,
because
I think
Witcher the Holy Night came out like a year after the Switch release.
and the whole reason why I haven't picked up the Switch version of this yet is the Witch on the Holy Night did well enough on PC that I'm assuming it's going to be a less of a wait than Witch on the Holy Night was.
Hopefully, yeah, hopefully. So, yeah, I think a PC version of this release will come sooner rather than later, too. I think that's a safe bet on that end. But yeah, I mean this was awesome. I scored it a 9. I felt really strongly for it, and I think I'm just looking forward to like hearing more and more people talk about it, seeing the parts that they like, where they're at, thoughts and so forth. It's just incredible to see. It's such an important piece of like media to my heart. And really establish what I love about Type Moon.
Yeah,
Um,
I would love to do a review for it too, but
yeah.
you did the best job you ever could do for this thing. There's no
Thank
way I could
you.
match this. So I was
That means a
like,
lot.
I'm so glad that you did it.
Thank you. Yeah, I tried my best for sure. Yeah, so people, if you're interested in hearing more about it, I wrote up a review. Please read it and check it out. Support these kinds of efforts, these miracle localizations, and like just the general fantastic work that the localization team did because they knocked it out of the park.
Don't worry, Josh. I have free copies.
Hell yeah. So yeah, definitely. If you're interested in this at all, definitely support it in ways that you can. Thank you.
And Chow kind of mentioned this in passing in the last conversation, but we did have one other embargo that just released. We don't have a review up for it quite yet, and it releases next week. But the official release of Kuro no Kiseki, known in English as Trails Through Daybreak. So we had Scott on the review for this. At the time of talking, I don't think it's published quite yet, but we'll have it up in just within a day or two of the
I have
recording.
read it. He has posted it. It's like on the notes in our site, but it's not
Right.
posted because no one has edited and looked over it. But I read over it, and it'll be up
Yeah,
soon.
so we'll get it. Yeah, by the time you're listening to this, we'll likely have it published. So I have also been planning to play this game because I've been the one person on the podcast that's been keeping up with like the official English releases. So I'm very I'm up to date. I'm eager to play this. I played what was Hajimari called in English? I played it in English,
Alright.
but I still think of it as there you go, Reverie. I still think of it as Hajimari. I don't know, even though I played it as Reverie. So I got this game actually this morning before we started recording the podcast. I'm like, you know what? Because of the way they're releasing this game in English. It's on PC anyways. I can download Kuro no Kiseki, which now the Steam listing, at least if you log into Steam in English, says Trails Through Daybreak. I download it. I'm like, I'm just gonna check out the settings. Then I go to the menu and I'm like, wait, I can't read this. But I'm eager to play it. But Chow, I believe you've been playing the official English version of the game for another website. So you've played Kuro when it first released, and now you've played it as Daybreak. So I guess there's kind of two halves to the conversation here. You can speak to Kuro as what it is, just holistically, and then speak to it specifically in the context of the English localization, whether that's the translation, the voice actors, etc.
I think they did like a fantastic job with this. Okay, obviously, like there's certain like problems when I have playing through like the official localization. Like the name just keeps changing nonstop for some reason. It's like maybe like the version I was playing, they haven't like patched in some of the names in it yet. It's like the quest names just keep changing. Like every patch, I'm like working on a guide.
Oh,
I'm like,
and this
oh fuck,
is
I have to go
not what
back.
you want to hear if you're doing some guide writing, right?
Yeah,
So
I have to
you
go
need to know
back
what the
and
quest
like
names are.
like
Yeah, because
replay
those are
all.
the ones that's the thing that people are gonna be searching up, right? Is like the official quest name. So yeah, so just like
So yeah, it was like I was asking Rebose, who's like a big editor wiki and kind of part of the Nisa team, and I'm like, it's like the quest name just changed. It's like, which one are the official names? So that's kind of
and
like
he's like good question. You're like shaking like a fortune ball almost. I'm like, Rivos, what is it? It's like I don't know. Ask me later.
and then I was talking to a different guide writer, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's totally different from the videos that were uploaded from the demo or
That's
something
so
like."
sick.
And you're like, okay. So that's kind of like the localization problem right now. But like, okay, so whatever we're getting, it's gonna be final, I guess, from now, right?
Yeah, there's like specific guide writer problems, and not necessarily reflective like the average
Yeah, like
player problems.
that's not. Yeah, that's also like pre-release. Like even
Yeah,
a game that's developed in English could have that issue pre-release.
Like
I mean,
even
when
our
I
reviewer
was
Scott White had a problem too. He has the game constantly crashing at one point, and then he had to find some workaround and talk to them.
I mean, I
Yeah. What were you
remember
saying, Adam?
reviewing or no, I don't I had an early code, I don't know if I reviewed it. Trails the third, and
uh
that
huh.
game and this isn't that uncommon really in Japanese localization sometimes, is that it just had a good chunk of text wasn't translated yet. Like, oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I remember, like I understand that, like definitely from Scott and all your points, because when I was doing the East 9 review, I don't know if you remember this, Adam. I was like, do I reach out to Nisa, because this game keeps on fucking crashing on me
Oh,
like
yeah.
really badly, and like it's not good because I don't think it had like auto saves, or if it did, like they were very infrequent, right? So I had to be,
Oh,
I had
yeah,
to
I
like,
remember.
I had to like be very, I had to like save very often in that review build for the game, because that crashed a lot on PS5
Yeah, I don't want to
pre-release.
misinterpret it, but I
Yeah.
remember, correct me if I'm wrong, that you were pretty damn frustrated because you're like, well, my experience with the game was kind of poor because of this crashing issue, so I'm going to discuss it like when I go to write it up. But then within a couple days of release, it was fixed. So it's like, well, it sort of invalidates the relevancy of your review, but not the relevancy of your experience with the game. Because you're like, well, when
Yeah.
I played it, this was an issue that I had.
Yeah.
No
Yeah,
one
and
else
I
will have that
remember
issue.
I remember that was especially odd because it was only on PS5, but it was fascinating like seeing that happen with you on the Western version of East 9 before launch, because I remember that one of the first one of the first games I played on my PS5 was East 9's Japanese version, which did not have any crashing issues. So it was very, very.
Yeah, it was really odd, but we're getting besides the point. Just overall, Chow, like how did the English script for like the Trails to the Daybreak turn out compared to, I know you played the Japanese release as well.
Yeah, I think the English localization is great, but there's a lot of like modern like jokes, like the meme with the old man. It's like if anyone meets Aaron in this game, he always treats Van like an old man. So he always calls him like an old geezer and stuff. And there's this one line, it's like, "Hey, let's put you to bed, old man," which is kind of like the meme with the grandma, where the girls like brings like the
Yeah.
grandma to the nursery home and said, "Let's put you to bed, grandma." There's like those kind of lines,
Uh-huh.
And
and the
how old is Van? He's like
He's
22?
24. That's why
Yeah, he's
everyone's like,
24, yeah.
He's
he's young and he's treating him like an old guy. And there's also this one girl who's only 27. And everyone's saying, "Oh, it's like I'm only 27." Everyone treats her like an old lady. You
And
know?
that fucking Mega Man picture of grandpa portrait said going, "I'm 30 years old."
yeah.
But
Thank
it's like
you.
that kind of thing. It's like, well, I guess boomers these days. If you're 24, you're a boomer now.
Well, at least I didn't use boomer in the translation. That's good use
But
of
it's like, yeah,
boomer.
there's like a lot of these modern takes, and I'm not sure if people will gel with it. I'm sure there's one thing that might causes outrage, probably. I don't know, like when Van meets Quadri for the first time in Japanese. Do you know what they said, James? Josh? Do you remember?
I don't remember the exact line, but it roughly like translated to what sex are you, pretty much, or like I'm
Okay.
not sure
So in the English version, he basically
I'm not sure
asks,
what sex are you, pretty much. I believe what Van
okay,
said to Quattro.
so Van basically asks, like, what are your pronouns when you meet him for the first
Yeah,
time, right? So
yeah.
yeah, it's like
It,
that's kind of a modern thing, right? How they
it's one of
write.
those. It's one of those. It's like if you said like what's like I'm not sure like what sex are you. I don't know if that would flow as naturally as like what pronouns are you, because I think what pronouns are
Also,
you are still within the spirit of the line. Not necessarily
yeah,
maybe not one to one, but it's still within the spirit of the
it's within the
meaning.
spirit, and also like there's like moments deliberately in like Daybreak's story that makes it clear that like Van is like canonically an LGBT ally. So
But
Yeah. So
But yeah, this game is fantastic in my opinion. I love the new battle system. I know it's a little easy to break. I know our reviewer doesn't agree with that. He's like thinking it's like, oh, I can't find any system to break in this game, and I'm like, are you sure? And I posted like the shard skill about it. It's like, oh, I didn't know that existed. You know?
also you can also just Giga Juice Agnes to like just be just to wipe everything out with like I forgot what magic or crafts. You can just make her a nuker as well, and like you kind of trivialize like
Yeah,
even
like
like
this
there.
game's very easy to break. If you're
Yeah.
complaining that there's like no system to break it, it's like this game's like full of holes that you could break it nonstop, right? So
So
that's kind of like my opinion with the game. I feel like a lot of the battle system is like there's only like one strat when you're doing like combat. It's that Van use coin bullet, and then all the enemies are on him, and you just have the rest of the party and nuke the mobs, basically, right? That's like literally all my strats for killing all the boss. So
Yeah,
I'm not
yeah.
sure if people are doing looking the same way.
They oh, we'll get into it later, but at least its sequel does vary it up with more viable strategies. But I think the switch, the big thing with Daybreak, from Reverie and past Trails games was they adopted before Metaphor introduced it to the world. This hybrid real time with turn based like battle system pretty much. So you go into battles and you can wail on enemies in real time with a very standard attack string, and then you can at some point switch seamlessly into a turn-based battle system just on the fly. And I think at first I was like very
Lukewarm? Are you
apprehensive.
lukewarm about it?
It definitely was like one of those things. Like I don't know how that's gonna go until like the rubber met the road, and I felt and saw it you know, playing out
It,
for
it
the very
works.
first time. It's like, oh yeah, this totally is awesome.
Like I
It is-
actually love this new system a lot, and the quartz system is actually my favorite. I know
oh yeah,
people, I, I hate to bring it back, but it's like some people don't gel with it because they don't find it simple. But I love this. It's like you just get like awesome
Wait,
passives like nonstop all the time with this
can
quartz
you
system.
define, like, I don't want you to go too in the weeds, but like the big thing that I never really gelled with all of the Trails to Cold Steel and Hajimari is the Master Quartz just felt too over tuned in terms of like 90% of everyone's build was just determined by which Master Quartz they have. Is
That
it
they kind of follows the
doesn't
same trap. There's something called
okay.
holo cores, which it's kind of like the master quartz, but it doesn't have the arts, so you can kind of like, oh, you could equip this, so your character has all like the evasion tank stats, but then you can kind of change what arts you have by putting in an arts plugin or whatever, or arts driver, right? And then you have like this whole like preloaded like arts list, and
it's
then
not it's not as broken as Master Quartz, but there's more customizability to it.
yeah, you could kind of
Okay.
like switch around with that.
I
So
don't know, I'm optimistic. And in general, like I think I reviewed Reverie and I thought it was fine. Like it wasn't great. I think I was just kind of I went into that review biased and so here's behind the scenes. Every review is biased. Um because like I was just kind of a little bit not sick, but like bored of the characters. Like it felt like I was looking forward to things being wrapped up, getting out of Arabonia. And that's why I'm really excited for Daybreak, is just because like a
everything
fresh
is
cast,
new.
fresh
Everything is new,
start,
right?
like, and we've talked in the past, like there really isn't a perfect starting point for a long series like this, and we don't want to tell people, well, before you can play this, you have to play 300 hours of other games. But this game, it's obviously I can't speak to this. I'm going on Josh's word and other people's words. It seems like it's a good like standalone entry if people want to say like I'm curious about the series. Um, I'm interested in at least getting my feet wet. Where should I start out? Well, this one seems like it's an okay
Yeah,
place to
like
start.
like
And
like
I
I tell people like it is a good one and done game. Like for people who are like interested, like in maybe just try to get a solid JRPG, right? Of like, hey, I want to like play this game, but I feel like there's so many other Trails games before this. Do I need them? Like, no, if you just like want to play a good like solid JRPG, like a one and done, like there's a good isolated enough storyline that like of course there'll be some characters and some maybe text references, like when like say Ren says Estelle and Joshua, and you don't know who Estelle and Joshua are. It's not the end of the world, you know.
Yeah,
It's
but the fandom treats it as is. Like, oh, you missed this reference. How dare you?
yeah, and like I tell people if you ever want to like have people like give this series a shot at all, and you're gonna
You gotta
gatekeep,
stop
yeah,
gatekeeping.
yeah, you gotta. No one's gonna try this out at all if you're just gonna be a douchebag about it, you know.
I asked a
So
friend to try this game, and he said he was gonna play it. But
yeah,
the thing is, he's not gonna like buy Sky to find out all these
yeah,
references.
I wouldn't want
and the
people to
thing is like
you know.
it's not it's a line, but it's not a fine line. Like there's a difference between saying I think you should start at the beginning of the sub arc versus I think you should start at Trails of Cold Steel 3.
Yeah, exactly.
But
You
it's
know.
like, yeah, like so far, like the references are kind of like minor to me. But I feel like I'm not kind of die for not getting that reference, in my opinion, right? It's like, oh, it's like don't compare us to those loser and cross spells from this first major boss fight you get to, and like, oh, I know that reference.
I was like,
I'm not
"Oh
gonna
no,
die over
Chum, you
it.
didn't get that reference. It's over."
But I'm not gonna die over it. But
Uh,
it can sound like a fucking big deal, right?
you won't appreciate the story if they don't call if you don't understand who Scrimblow is. Ah.
Like I'm sure there's probably some other reference I missed. It's like who the hell is this thing, right? And like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. It's like Brian said, like it is way different than like say, hey, go start with something. The name of this title, it has 3 at the end. You know, it's like okay,
Yeah.
well, I mean, you can if you want to, but just know that it has a 3 at the end for a reason. So
And
yeah,
it does seem like there's no official news on this, but Kondo is being very coy about Sky remakes, remasters of some sort. Nothing announced, but there's lots of murmurs and
yeah,
scuttlebutt.
they pretty much
Yeah.
all but like confirmed it, like officially
Yeah.
confirmed it. I think there's definitely they're working on
It's
Yeah.
it's
remake of
very
that.
funny that I basically put out that like translation of that Q&A question last December, and people were like, "You're looking too deeply into things," and it's like
Don't
I
think
feel
so.
like like
I don't think so. I was
Falcom is
there.
Falcom is very transparent during their fiscal meetings of like and like those Q&A sessions of like they're not, they don't really make their teasing very subtle at all during
yeah,
those sessions, especially to investors. They can't lie to
yeah.
investors.
Yeah, and it's like sometimes like they do have answers that are like a little bit vague, so you can't read too much into it. But like I remember the whole reason why I even like bothered to translate that is like this feels too specific to
Yeah,
not be something that they're like active. But
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's all, but they're definitely sooner rather than later. They're gonna like, hey, this is what they look like. Well,
But you know
it'll
what?
be
This game
interesting.
has
It'll be
more
interesting.
reference to Sky games than anything else, in my opinion.
Well,
So
that's it. So you gotta play
maybe,
Sky, right, Chad?
yeah, that remake Sky. This is your chance to try out Sky,
Or you
right?
can, they already released in the West. You could just play those, but people are like, it's too old. They're stinky. They don't look
there
good.
there's definitely a contingency of players where at least I can understand this, where it's like you tell someone, hey, you should probably start with Sky, and it's like, well, I don't have a PC, so I can't do that.
That's
That's not
fine.
helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's totally fine. Like like if they don't have easy access to a PC, and even
Yeah.
if they somehow
Well,
had access to a PC, they would run on anything.
yeah,
Honestly,
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, like, though, to be fair, if you have literally any PC made in the
yeah.
last decade, any PC, it could run it. But
Even
yeah,
in the last 2 decades, arguably.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's fine. I kind of understand. Like at some point, there are some people like who have a threshold of like, hey, I can't play like old types of games, or like I can't stand types of games that look like that. It's
Or they
fine.
might have a PC that like they use it for work and they don't use it to game and they don't want to use it for gaming. They're like,
yeah,
that's my work PC. I
yeah,
have a PS4 that I like to use. I want
That's
to play
fine.
this game. I don't want
yeah,
to play it on
Yeah,
PC, and
I
that's
get
yeah.
it.
totally valid.
Completely unrelated to what you were saying about the like the PC element of the equation. It's funny how like it's such a prevailing sentiment that it's like, oh, Trails in the Sky looks too old. When from my perspective, I think Trails in the Sky is a lot more visually pleasing than Cold Steel 1 or 2.
I
Yeah,
totally agree with that sentiment. 2D sprites are age better than shitty 3D models.
I just barely did a replay of the first chapter like not even like a month ago, and I've been busy with like work here and there, but like I'm very far into like second dots. I replay a second chapter, and I'm like, yeah, it's still a good time. I don't know, but then again, I'm very tolerant of like how well, I'm not tolerant. I'm very. It doesn't bother me how old the game is.
Looks.
Yeah,
Yeah, man.
I can play like Famicom games just fine, and like, okay,
Yeah, as long as it's
hell
not
yeah.
distracting. I have certain pet peeves that will drive me nuts ever, right?
If
Like
it's
if
like flashy screens, like like a lot of flicker and flat flashing, a lot of like old games like to do that. Like yeah, that's very distracting for
okay,
sure.
so there's an argument I always make with the Mobius community. How I always
Uh
say that Grand Blue Fantasy on mobile looks a million times better than Fate Grand Order. If I get
huh.
murdered for saying that, but the sprites are way more detailed
Yeah,
in Fate Grand Order. But the reason I don't like it, they move kind of like very jank, like a flash animation.
yeah,
So
they're very like a puppetry, almost like they're on a marionette
yeah,
or
so
puppet
I don't like
strings.
that. That's like the worst thing to me when it comes to animation.
Yeah,
If your
yeah,
character moves
makes
like
sense.
very jank like that, I fucking hate it. Okay,
Mhm. Yeah, I get it.
but
Yeah.
it's like the character sprite looks very dumb in Grand Blue, but they move very smoothly, right?
Yeah,
So it's like
I
a
get
different
that
comparison. Right?
for sure. So yeah, but it seems like just obviously our review for Daybreaks will come soon, but in general, like other Western outlets that seems to like be reviewing pretty highly.
As
This
of
is
right
the
now, it is the highest rated Trails game on OpenCritic.
Wow, that's
I'll tell you this: it's like my opinion does not align with the review. Okay, so if you see that, it's like, oh, this is not what they said in the podcast. It's like that's not my opinion.
Well,
We have different
well,
Hey,
writers.
surprise!
let's
Sites are made up of
generalize
individuals.
that a bit. Yeah, there you go.
yeah.
Yeah.
We're made up of different different writers, different people, different opinions. Obviously, they're stating the obvious. But a lot of people will say
but people
the
always like,
entire
oh.
site has said this. All of you said it's like.
But my favorite one is someone's still giving us flack on Elden Ring review because we didn't give Future Redeem a 10 out of 10. Still got 9. It's like
can't go
different
into that.
people. And it's also not the same people that reviewed it too. So
Oh man.
And a lot of times, like you'll write a review, and all your thoughts will be cohesive and coherent, and then at the very end, you're like, "Does this read like an 8 or a 9?" And then you just pick whichever feels right, And that process is different from person to person. So there you go. Anyways, I don't want to be. Let's get off our soapboxes,
Yeah,
even though there are true statements.
So I mean, just in general, I think people will have a great time with Daybreak.
yeah, it's like it's not
Yeah,
like
and
that's in a while.
once I get so I won't be here next week on the podcast, but I'll see if it runs on Steam Deck or anything. I'll play it while I'm out,
Yeah.
potentially, and obviously I don't want to just revisit it wholesale like as soon as I get back. But once I play through it, I might chime in
Mhm.
with some impressions.
For sure.
Not having played the Japanese version at all, being the fresh-faced
Yeah, I think
English representative.
I think
think
there's a good chance you'll probably gel with it, just because, despite the very true statement that like different writers and all that, I'm pretty sure every person on this podcast feels the same way about Cold Steel 4, and so far feels similarly about Daybreak.
Scott would disagree with us. We got completely opposite opinions.
He's also not on this podcast.
Yeah, he said it, everyone on the podcast.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, let us know how it works on deck, on your experience on deck.
I played a little bit of it, and it works pretty well.
Okay.
Look, I played the Cloud Leopard version on the deck, and it works perfectly fine. The only reason I didn't stick with it is because of a certain means didn't really work all the time.
Hopefully, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll have to like put out like the megaphone again, like when it releases on Steam, because it probably won't show up on Steam's front page because they're gonna do the English patch method, like how they did with Nayuta. They're probably and it'll be during the Steam sale still as well. I think the Steam sale will still be going on.
Oh
So
God!
so
I
on
didn't
top of,
even
like-
think about that.
Yeah, so on top of like not being in the front page, it'll just be buried by principle because the Steam summer sale is going to be going on, and like people never ever look at new releases.
It's such a confusing release too. Like even the people ask me, "Is like, hey, are we allowed to publish information? This game's been out for a year, according to Steam pages."
Yeah, I do feel bad for NIS America there, because they, at the time when they made that decision for how they were going to do the release, they hadn't seen how it worked out for Nayuta yet. So by the time they realized it was a mistake, they had already released the Japanese version for Daybreak on Steam, so they couldn't take that back. Going forward, I think they're just going to wait for the localization release on Steam, which is a shame. I feel like the easy way to fix it would just be the Japanese versions be labeled early access. Just because then when you like release it, it would. I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah, it's tough. I wonder if they do it that method. If the Japanese market will have confusion or be maybe offended in that respect too. Perhaps. If
In
you
the
just
end, you just gotta wait, I guess.
Yeah. It's such a muddy situation. On
I
top
feel
of
like we'll
the
find out.
double listings with Clouded Leopard Entertainment.
I feel like we'll find out once Ys 10 comes out. We'll find out if it really does damage to the numbers or it.
Well, Ys 10 is. Ys 10 already has a. It has a double listing now. That's right. But no, it doesn't have a double listing anymore. It used to, but then the Clouded Leopard version, I think, got delisted from Steam because the port
was garbage.
Yeah,
it was like total ass.
Yeah. And I also remember there was like a thing where like Valve themselves stepped in because they had the exact same fucking name on Steam.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure that Valve is not quite pleased with Clouded Leopard at the moment.
Well, I think that covers us for games we've been playing. Anything else we want to talk about before we go into the news slate?
No, I'm good. I got to try out the 1.1 update for Wuthering Waves. It's nothing too,
Hang
nothing
me
worth
when
talking
Chang Li's
about.
out.
maybe on a lighter week, I'll talk more about that because it just came out. Yeah,
Gotcha.
then I'll get to tell Chow about Chang.
All right, a couple article shout-outs before we go into the news. The first one, of course, we have the written review for Tsukihime, A Piece of Blue Glass Moon, that Josh spoke to earlier in the podcast. We do have another feature from Paul, who revisited Mobius Final Fantasy, which is a game I know very little about, but apparently had, sad face, a very loyal ardent fan base. And I guess the game has been shut down for about 4 years now, and certain people still miss it very dearly, and Paul is one of those people. And basically wrote an op-ed just talking about his time with the game, kind of giving it a little bit of a spotlight, a little bit of a retrospective. So kind of a personal op-ed, and Paul's kind of our best writer at that sort of thing. I won't say best, one of our best writers on that sort of thing up on the site for a niche game that not many of us experienced firsthand. We have another review up on the site for Destiny 2: The Final Shape. Did you speak
Yep.
about this at all last week on the podcast, James?
I think I did a bit.
You're trying to get through the final raid, I believe.
Yeah, so I did end up clearing the raid, so I guess that
Mhm.
I guess I can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Well, basically, I think I've said in the past that like the one main thing about Destiny 2 that really appeals to me is that the rating in it is actually really good. Like I would say that by and far, like Destiny's raid design is better than Final Fantasy 14's. More interesting for sure. But yeah, it's like I thought it was a very good expansion. I am glad that they stuck the landing. It is still a shame what happened to all of the staff that was laid off because the Bungie management wanted to keep getting their checks from Sony from the buyout. It's yeah.
I
Good ex-
am. Is the final shape like the way it like ends? Like, is it sort of like the Endwalker equivalent to FF14 in that aspect? Of like, are they like wrapping up a whole chapter that was established at like the beginning?
Yes. I would say that there's way more of a hook for what comes next than what Endwalker did. Endwalker, and I'm sure like Chow can agree with me here. I don't fucking know what the hell they're gonna do for this next story arc because they basically went as far as you could go in terms of like scope of the conflict. So I genuinely don't know. Whereas with Destiny 2 The Final Shape, it's like the scope was huge, but also there was a very clear here's what could like be an escalation or the next step, and there's like lingering questions that Endwalker didn't really have. So
Yeah, that'll. So I guess yeah. So but they still intend to continue supporting Destiny 2 after the final shape. It's not like a thing that's like, hey, we're done with like
at
this
least for
thing.
now. At least for now.
Okay.
I feel much more confident that they'll keep supporting it now than before the Final Shape came out, because I was very worried that if the Final Shape didn't do well enough, that they might have just like said, fuck it. But
Okay.
it seems like it's definitely been like it's definitely well regarded. It's definitely been received positively. So I'm pretty sure that it's gonna be just fine.
Okay.
Which is good for Destiny 2 fans.
Yeah.
I think I don't know if I said specifically the review, but it's such a shame that the Final Shape is such a good expansion, but I can't recommend it to anyone that's not already playing Destiny 2.
Yeah. I mean that's always the problem with Destiny 2. It's like I hear just the new player experience for that for years has just been
Non-existent.
yeah. Yeah.
Non-existent. Like literally the only reason I was able to hop back in on Lightfall was twofold. One, I had already played through like the base game Destiny 2 and Forsaken before either of them had been removed. And two, I had like a group of friends who were able to kind of ease me into it a bit. that I would not have been able to have done it otherwise. It's kind of like the same problem that Warframe has, where it's like ain't nobody getting into Warframe without a couple friends, like basically like showing them the ropes and whatnot.
Pretty much. I imagine that's the case. Like the last time I played Destiny 2 was like the Forsaken, and that was before it came to Steam. So I don't think I even linked it up to the Steam release when that limited window. So I was like, yeah, if I wanted to somehow ever like get back into Destiny 2, I'd be like, I'd be like, oh, I don't know what's going on anymore.
Yeah. But yeah, well, I'm actually curious. When you played when you played Forsaken, did you ever do the raids back then, or no? Because I remember
I played the raids. Yeah.
Oh, so you did Last Wish. So you know what I said. So like you know what I mean when I say that like Destiny raiding is actually incredible because Last Wish was insane.
I remember my distinct memory about like that raid was like when you had to like like when you're going through some shit together with your group and you had to like get the like you like go to like the proper like symbols or shapes and like people had to call it out as well. So you always had like that weird like weird colloquial terms with your group because they're calling out something
upside
that
down
you had to
bird.
Like, go through. Yeah, exactly. Upside down bird.
It's also really funny how like that raid, I don't know how anyone cleared that shit on console with like Riven's Eyes, where it's like, hey, so you need to like write down the order and the location of which of the eyes lit up, and so you can do it at the end, so you don't wipe, so you can do the next like run of Riven's phase. That is such a cracked fight in like a positive way, but man, insane.
Destiny raids are like they're the highlight of the game. They're probably the reason to play the game, pretty much in my eyes, because they're very creative and inventive usually.
Yep.
Going on into the news here. Oh no, we do have one more feature article that I want to shout out before I go into the news. This one is one that was put up by Adam. It is. We talked about this game a little bit, and we talked about this discussion a little bit. I think back in the Summer Games Fest, Adam, you had a chance to talk to some developers at Obsidian, Kerry Patel and Gabe Paramo, about Avowed. Is there anything specific about the? I know we talked about the trailer. We talked about the release date coming and going. We talked about the gameplay like presentation. Is there anything specific to the interview to kind of put a bow on the summer presentation for Avowed coming out later this year?
Not so much. Basically, my interview was just kind of, I was trying to just get some basically overall details about like how the game is structured, how it flows, and all these things. It's sometimes hard to interview about a game that's like a brand new game, especially, I know it's loosely connected to Pillars because I don't have any like personal experience with it yet, so it's hard to, I only can ask them like, what's the game going to be like in their words. Basically, the one thing that they really seem to focus on is having this game that you have freedom to kind of build the character as you want, and in terms of how you do combat and in terms of how you build your stats and the dialogue options and things like that. So very much roleplay-y. They did basically say it's not open world. It is they compared it to Outer Worlds. They've done that several times in terms of like size and scope, which I think is fair. Rather than having like a gigantic open world, like something a little bit more, well defined and maybe a little bit more manageable is a good idea in theory, anyways. So I'm very curious about this game. They've also said there's not going to be any romance, which I know a lot of people, they really only play these sorts of games because of romance. So that's interesting to see how the characters, right now the character cast in that game is kind of a big unknown for me, and we'll see if any of them, leave any sort of impression once the game is out.
I forget if you were on the podcast, but we kind of did like an impromptu. It wasn't really a comparison, but it kind of, in retrospect, was a sort of comparison between the Veilguard Bowers game, which is every companion can be romanced regardless, and Avowed, no romance. And like, guess what? Both are valid. Like, and there's different characters you can kind of do with each, and the scope of the game is slightly different. And they've been kind of tapping this is not our answer to Skyrim sign for a while now. Like, this is not a big open world. This is not a sandbox. Unfortunately, I think the Outer Worlds comparison, I get what they're going for in terms of like framework or scope, but that game kind of got lukewarm reception. So it's kind of like, not the best comparison if you're trying to market your game, but I do understand what they mean by that. In terms of, I also saw the comparison when Outer Worlds came out to like Mass Effect. Like it's not open world, but like you go to different like nucleuses of locations, and will have a non-linearity within that location. But then you go to the next, and then you go to the next. But yeah, your interview was I read through the transcript as you put it up, and it's kind of nice to see the interview directly from the devs. You actually spoke to them in person. It wasn't that we sent them questions and they sent back answers. Like you spoke to them. This is what you recorded and then transcribed for us. So very candid interview from Carrie and Gabe over at Obsidian. So we do
Yeah,
have
it's
that
always
up
nice to
on the
actually
website
get to
as
like
well.
it's always nice to get like actual in person. Well, this is over Zoom, but like face to face interviews, because they can give longer, more detailed answers, and I can ask follow ups and things like that, which you can't really do in a lot of interviews, which are like you send them questions, they send you responses, like those ad hoc ones. So I just think in this interview is there's a lot of good copy there if you're curious about the game. You know, obviously, once I play the game, I'll probably have more questions about like how, this or that. But going into it, it's just kind of a good read just to kind of see what they're, going into it, what their philosophies are.
Adam, my heart goes out to you when they had to explain to you what Magrin's Fury was in that interview. They're like, "Oh, you don't play pillars. Okay, here's
Yeah.
what Magrin's Fury is." I was like, "Oh no!"
Ryan, what is Magrin's Fury?
I was thinking just like you, like this must have been really awkward for you during that moment.
Mhm.
I'll be honest. I don't remember. It's just been too long. Because uh, the first game goes into a lot of depth about the deities of the world and how they came to be and your position within it. The second game, Deadfire, is a lot more scoped on like a subset of them, like a couple in specific, and I don't remember if Magrin's one of them. Uh, that's kind of what goes back to the thing. Like if I had infinite time and resources and didn't have a day job and all this, I would definitely replay those games just so I can get all those references. But they've clearly said we have designed this game to not be Pillars 3. It is a game in the same universe. It is interesting though that they said it takes place a few years after. Like
Yeah.
if you were making a game that was in the same universe, but you wanted it to be like disassociated with the first two, I'm surprised they didn't say like 100 years prior or since. Instead, they just said a few years, which is kind of nice in some ways because that means they could directly reference like literally characters from the game. Like if oh, what's his name? Adair. He's like the hick fighter with the yellow beard. If he shows up, that would be like the most fan servicey thing they could do. I don't know. Like I have to check like the status of the world and the characters at the end of the previous game. Like, does that even make sense for them to show up? But they could do that, and there's obviously benefit to that. It kind of benefit it, for people who are fans of the world building and have played the previous games. It kind of gives them something
And
that
it'll be
if
totally
you
lost on you if you don't play the Pillars game. So
yeah
when he shows up
you,
and you don't recognize it, that's it. It's over. You should
yeah,
uninstall the game right then and
I
there.
mean, we were
there you go.
saying you gotta play Trails in the Sky first.
Uh-huh. That's right.
Wait,
If you see a Stalin Joshua's name in Daybreak and you don't understand it, you better just delete the game entirely, get a refund, and don't ever
We
try to
are
shoot
on our
games.
soapbox today, but I whatever. We are opinionated. We
I'm
are human beings
sorry.
with
Yeah,
opinions.
I like to pick on people. I'm so bad.
Look, people get a refund for the dumbest things, okay?
All right, but yeah, okay. So we do have the Avowed interview talking companions, gameplay, and the overall world with Obsidian up on the RPGsite.net. Okay, going into finally the headlines today. Not a lot. We have a very normal week of headlines, a couple smaller game announcements, and a couple follow-ups or some things we've already talked about. Here's one we'll kind of get up. I'll say get out of the way, but it's something that we'll be able to like fully, put a bow on within a couple weeks. And this is a leak. This is not something that was given out from a game publisher, but from the Japanese PlayStation Network. We have gotten kind of a sort of leaked, sort of inadvertently uploaded English logo for Kuro no Koseki 2 called Trails Through Daybreak 2. No Crimson Sim subtitle, just Trails Through Daybreak 2. That logo, it's been around. If you've been on Twitter or online at all, you've likely seen it. So very clearly, all but confirmed that this will be announced by News America very soon, likely at Anime Expo, which we will know shortly firsthand all the additional details that we don't get from the leak regarding that announcement. So maybe not a surprise, maybe the spoiling of a surprise.
It's just a very heartbreaking, unfortunate leak.
Yeah.
The James, we both first noticed of it. The Twitter user, ex user Hansuke, a very prominent Falcom community social media account, first noticed it, and then you checked it, and then I had other friends who have Daybreak or Kuro 2, who physical or digital on their hard drive. Check it. It's all but confirmed with the English logo there. Um, what this sucks, James, for Nisa. This sucks a
Yeah.
lot.
So I was outright told by someone at NISA that they're really pissed off about this because it was all on Sony's end. There was another Japanese release that got its localization kind of leaked this way, and they knew about it ahead of time, which is why they basically asked Sony, "Hey, so we're going to give you these assets because they need to be ready for when we announce this, presumably soon." And they were like, this isn't going to happen, right? Where it's not going to leak to people that have like their PlayStation set to English and own the Japanese version, right? And they were told, oh, this isn't going to, it's going to be fine, nothing to worry about. And lo and behold, it happened. So,
Sony. So, what can you do? And there's gonna be no repercussion for Sony. Obviously, they can't
Yeah, that's their.
Sony's like, what are you gonna do? And, oops.
In my opinion, I don't think it's too much of a big deal because it's like everyone knows Daybreak 2 is coming. It's like, what, you're not gonna announce Daybreak 2 is coming? So I don't feel like the big surprise has been blown because we don't know when it's coming out still, right?
No, we don't know, but it still sucks. Gonna be a big fanfare moment because Kondo himself is gonna be at that panel when they announced it there too. So like it's also gonna be it's almost like be like a make good, like a reestablishing of like how strong the relationship is with Falcom and Nisa. So it's symbiotic or symbolic in that aspect too, which is it dampens that, which sucks. Obviously, hopefully. Nothing else gets leaked. Like if they have like a time frame, hopefully that doesn't get leaked. Beforehand.
Imagine they leak Kai by accident.
Okay, that'd be fucked up.
Yeah.
That'd be fucked up.
Yeah, one of our headlines that was later down the pike here, but I put up here just to keep all the Falcom talk kind of together, is that on the Japanese side of things, of course, coming out in September is the newest entry in the series, Kaino Kaseki Farewell Ozamiria. We're not going to go into like too much detail here because it is 2 or 3 games out, depending on how you count it. Just saying that they're in the media cycle for Kaino Kaseki. Lots of commercials coming out and new updates kind of weekly for that. And the most recent web commercial shows a lot of returning characters, a lot of plot snippets that people are extracting from and speculating on. So I don't know if we'll go into too much more detail than that, but seems like it's a game that a lot of people who have been keeping up with the series since its beginning, since Trails 3rd especially, have a lot to look forward to for Kaino Kaseki. So look forward to that in English in maybe not too long, depending on when Daybreak 2 is slated.
yeah.
But still a ways out.
Yeah, so I think it's just like obviously not gonna say like which characters got revealed, but I think like unlike Daybreak 1, Kai will definitely rely on a lot of very series heavy knowledge, because like you said, some characters as far back as Trails in Sky the Third show up, Trails into Reverie, very gonna be very very important for this game.
It's always funny how like the thing with Trails is always, you can start with this game because this first game in an arc is you can definitely start here, but the problem is always the follow-up games. It's like you better have played everything, asshole.
Like even then, even though Daybreak 2 is not out in the West, there'll be like some characters that like, why are they here? It's like, oh, that's Daybreak 2 info.
Yeah.
That's
the second trailer have some wild trailer. Big spoilers.
It's so sick. The new web commercial for like every web commercial for Kai's of
I fucking love the new trailer though, man. It's a big spoiler, especially the last character that talks.
I mean, it's great for people like us who are essentially caught up, but for everyone else, it's like, man.
Like our conversation for is pretty much like a fucking CIA document. Just basically everything in spoilers, everything's redacted. Not for human eyes. Pretty much, it's great. It's awesome. Fantastic. So that's coming out end of September as usual. But yeah,
look forward to my unscored review.
Yeah. And then obviously this leak of Daybreak 2 sucks for Nisa. But then again, it also gave us like this weird text with it because there's always a descriptor with a game on PSN. So like when you highlight over this on your Japanese copy of Kuro 2, it just gives you the English logo, and then the descriptor for it is "Day will break again." It's like, what the fuck? That's all right. Yeah.
It's better to get over the barrier.
No, that is not better. What the fuck?
It is.
No, get over the barrier is fucking sick. Day will break again sounds. No way.
Civil
I
War.
For whatever reason, that tagline just reminds me of that one bit from Come Power. It's like it will be significant.
It reminds me of from Dusk Till Dawn, the movie. To be honest. So yeah. So at Anime Expo, Day will break again, if you know what I mean.
We do have an update for a game that was announced originally back in July of last year. This is a remaster of Riviera: The Promised Land, or is it a remaster? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Someone tee this up for me.
No, they
It's a
called it a
remaster.
remaster.
Yeah.
It's a remaster where they smudged it with a 2x side art.
Okay, yeah, okay. So I remember now. I just needed to have the cloud whips cleared. Adam posted some. This is a game that originally released in 2004. Originally released, I believe, on Game Boy Advance, and then showed up on PSP. And then so all the sprites in the remaster. Okay, let me not bury the lead. It's launching for Steam on July 17th. But Adam shared some snippets of the remaster, and it's got the Grandia HD super blurred sprites. We hate grain kind of look to it.
Apparently,
And it's like,
so this
Apparently,
game
you can't
originally
turn off the
released.
filter.
Thank
Oh,
God.
okay. Thank God.
Oh, you can.
Can you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because somebody in my mentions just said that what their previous remaster had the same thing going, but there was an option to disable the filter. So
Okay. All right. Now we're cooking here. Okay. Because when I saw this, I'm like, okay, I don't know if I can play this with the fucking smeared sprites.
It's like, they need to delete that function in any retro gaming thing. It's the worst thing that mankind has invented. The
You're
retro
not
gaming
wrong.
scene.
I mean, it is. I can't think of a single time I liked it. So you
It's
might
like,
be
well,
onto
let's
something.
smudge everything and everything is better. Yes, and you'll take it. And I can't believe there's actually YouTubers that defend this thing.
It's like the 60 FPS interpolated anime openings that people do.
Oh God.
Those. Damn it. Anyway, yeah. Riviera is a pretty good game. I like Riviera. What do you think, Adam? Have you played Riviera?
I haven't played any of these.
Oh, I thought you did for Riviera.
I've been meaning to.
Dang. Riviera is cool. It was a nice PSP RPG.
What about Nightmare? Was it Nightmare?
Knights of the Nightmare. Yeah, Knights of the Nightmare is a fucking sick game, not meant for human or normal people.
I want that. Actually.
Yeah, Knights of the
Sign
Nightmare is
me
a
up.
really fun game, but it'd probably be better with a mouse cursor instead of
Yeah, that's not playable on modern controllers.
It's not meant for human controllers for sure. There's some remastered features that they're adding into this one that they mentioned, like an event skip, fast forward, autosave. They said the bullet point for this is funny because they call it a reliable autosave function! Exclamation point. It's like I was like, wait, did it have autosave before, but it was unreliable then? I'm trying to remember.
it is an interesting adjective.
Yeah, and and a boost function to
all I'm
quickly build
thinking,
skills.
based off what you said, is my shirt saying that I have a reliable autosave function is leading to a lot of questions answered by my shirt.
Yeah, pretty much. That's why it got me thinking. I was like, wait a minute, I don't remember anything about an autosave when I last played this game 10 million years ago. So hopefully this does better than Yggdra Union on Steam. Like I feel like Yggdra Union didn't get the traction that it needed because it had that early access period for Yggdra Union, which led to a lot of confusion. It's like, is this done or is it not? It was content complete, but they wanted to get more feedback during that early access period to better iron out bugs and so forth. But it was content complete from what I understood when it launched. So it seems like this one they're just gonna release it normally, not during an early access period, and hopefully this gets the the momentum and traction that it needs to like more reliably bring more Sting games to Steam, because having a modern releases of this game is like just makes it easier for people to just access them instead of like
Yeah.
digging up like old devices.
I have
So-
two
Has my
comments.
PSP battery exploded yet?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty
I-
much.
I wonder if Sting tried to release the Dungeon Traveler games themselves, if they would have better luck.
I wonder. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah,
But yeah. So
because
So-
Steam is so inconsistent on that shit. You literally don't know. It's like,
yeah.
I have two
So,
comments.
there's-
One, Igor Union, it released in early access, and then when it got its full release on Steam, it released for Switch at the same time in English. Not so for Riviera. It is on Switch in Japan. It actually came out first. But right now, no news of English Switch. I'm sure it'll
Oh yeah.
come eventually based on just precedent, because Igor Union did, but nothing official. There's nothing yet. My other comment was, I wonder how Gungnir is going to work, because that was the only game, I believe, of this series, this Department Heaven series, that wasn't like an Atlas localization. It was Sony, and I believe they still have rights. I think you can still buy it on like PS3 or whatever. Maybe I might be wrong, but that one had like a different localization, like in a different licensing. So I wonder how that was going to work. It's in terms of like, can Sting release the English version or not? I don't know.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. There's like weird territory to traverse across. But you want to root for Sting no matter what somehow. And I'm trying to think of there like besides Knights of the Nightmare, were there other modern releases? Did they have like Blaze Union and the other
Yigdra
Game-
Union? That's
Gloria
basically
Union?
all I can think of.
Glory Union? Yeah, but like aside from Knights of the Nightmare, were there any other like modern releases of Sting that I forgot besides the known one?
I
Not
wrote
that I
this
can think
out.
of.
Let's see. Shoot.
It's like the Department Heaven stuff. There was like I said, Gungnir, Blaze Union, Gloria Union. I think those are the only ones. But did they announce a Gungnir modern re-release previously?
nothing yet.
I forgot. Okay.
Okay, so yeah,
then for-
so here we go. Knights of the Nightmare, which did release in English, which we were just talking about, did get a remaster in Japan, but I don't think it got an English release. So
Oh yeah. Hopefully, dude, I really want a Knights of the Nightmare on Steam with mouse cursor support. That'd be so good. I really need that. Actually, that's a fun game. But
Yeah,
goddamn,
I mean,
I don't
back then you're playing
want.
with a stylus, but with a mouse, can you imagine?
Yeah. I don't want to like replay that in any way but with a mouse cursor. That's the thing. You'd have to do so much management in that.
So the Steam release for Riviera, The Promised Land, will come out on July 17th. The Switch version that came out in Japan, like there's no news on that getting an English patch, or sorry, not patch, release yet. Though I imagine if it's going to be on English and Steam, that we'll see it on Switch in not too long, but nothing to announce quite yet. The next two headlines we have here are actually game announcements from some new studios. I believe these are both debut announcements from some interesting locations. The first one, this is a first-person action-adventure RPG called Alkahest, like Alchemist, only Alkahest. And we got an announced trailer for this. It's about 2 minutes of what looks like first-person gameplay. And this game is described not compared to something like Skyrim, but compared to Dishonored, Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, Kingdom Come Deliverance, that sort of bit. So a little bit of that immersive sim element, but in kind of a high fantasy setting. I think that this trailer looks really neat. Like just visually, the graphics are pretty good, and the gameplay that they show looks really fluid and interesting. The only thing about it is that it almost gives me a little bit. This is going to date me a bit. It almost gives me a little bit of that like Killzone 2 debut trailer vibe.
Yeah.
I have two comments again. One, not to be confused with Alkahest, the Square Super Famicom game developed by HAL Laboratory. Two,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah. Two, it seems like the prevailing response to this trailer was "Get out of here with that gameplay." Like, is this real?
Yeah, a lot like Killzone 2. Yeah, it is very. It looks really, really
It
out of this
looks
world.
neat. Like
Yeah,
if that is gameplay, it
yeah.
looks really fluid and fun. It's first person only, so it's kind of got like the Kingdom Come Deliverance when that was being. Obviously, we have the sequel looking forward to later this year. They were putting a lot of focus on like their combat reactivity and things like that, and that's kind of what the developers here. Oh, I never specified. The developer is Push On. Two words, Push On. They're based in Cyprus, which I think is pretty neat. A team of about 40 developers, and they've got individually ranging from indie to AAA experience. And yeah, the what they show looks really cool, but there's no UI elements. It kind of has. I hate saying this because it makes me sound like I know more than I do, but it looks phony. But I can't substantiate that. Like, why does it look phony? I don't know. Maybe it's
I
just
mean,
like
that's the same thing with Killzone 2. Like people back then are like, I don't know, that doesn't look like real gameplay, and sure enough, it wasn't real gameplay. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't
So,
blame you.
but I think the vibe is kind of neat. The idea of
Mm.
having like an immersive sim type game, and they didn't use that description. I am, so maybe that's not what they're going for here. But based on the comparison and based on the description, that's kind of what I'm gleaning. But set with the fantasy setting, seems like it's kind of a niche that could be cool, and what they're showing in the trailer could be neat. No date, very early. This was an announcement, so we don't know what window we would expect to see this. But I'm interested to see more, just because I like to support new products from indie games that
Yeah,
are seem interesting. But and the first trailer, like I think I'd prefer. I guess we can't really judge it until we know what the gameplay is actually like. If it really hits the bar and that's what it is, like perfect trailer. If it's completely not like that, then terrible trailer, sort of thing.
it's like one of those things that like because now that we know more about like how games are built and how they function, like there's like certain things in the trailer that like it's not to say that it's like it's definitely fake. It's just one of those things that you wonder if it is, because there's like small details that you think about logistically, like there's a point where like an arrow or some spear gets fired into like towards your character. They block with a wooden shield, and like the upper right corner of that shield gets pierced through by that projectile, and then but it gets cuts to a different shot. So you think about that logistically. It's like, okay, do I can you pull out that projectile, and will that hole persist on that shield? So is there some sort of like deterioration system on that shield then by it taking more and more hits? So is there like some sort of durability system that's reflected on in real time by by how things impact your equipment? Just subtle things like that like you think about. It's like, so is that, if that's real, that's fucking amazing. But that's so hard to like do as well. You think about.
Also, like the character perspective, it's doing a lot of like swaying, which does some decent like movement for like showcasing their animations in the trailer. But like if in like natural gameplay you were swaying that much, like a little bit of head bob, as long as it's on a toggle that you can tweak to,
Yeah, if that's a
be
toggle. I'm putting it
accessible.
down all the way
Yeah,
down. Then
yeah, to be accessible, because certain people have different sensitivities to that. But in
yeah,
this trailer, there's a lot of left to
mm,
right swaying. Just even
yes.
when he's just like walking, and I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah, yeah, that has to be toggles. I have to put that all the way down because like even just like seeing like a little bit of that in the trailer, I was like, I was getting a little nauseous already. I'm so old.
Yeah. But yeah, now that you mentioned it, Adam, I'm even on the YouTube comments, and some people are like, "Wish this was actual gameplay." Like, cool. When's the gameplay trailer coming out? And to be fair to them, they don't call it a gameplay trailer.
Yeah,
They call it an announced trailer.
right.
It's just designed to look like gameplay. But it looks neat. At least conceptually, we'll follow
Yeah.
up and we'll see if we're being suspicious Debbie Downers for no reason, or
If they prove us wrong, then I'll happily be
well,
wrong, dude.
yeah,
That'll
there
be
you go.
very exciting.
Mhm. The other game that we have that is also from a debut project from a new studio. The studio is named Mogu, and they are based in Mexico. And they have announced a RPG called Codex Eternal Eclipse. And this game is a pixel style RPG that has gameplay very reminiscent of Paper Mario. So we've talked about there was another indie game that changed names. I don't remember what the name is anymore, but I remember it had multiple names. They talked about 2 weeks ago that also um, kind of had that same play style. And of course, Bug Fables is a big one that came out 2021, 2020. But so this one looks pretty neat. Obviously, I really like that. It's kind of a well worn but very effective style of gameplay that I think seems like well suited for a debut product for a new developer. The story talks about having multiple characters you can play as, a lot of platforming involved in navigating the world. The usual things like player input during attacks in the Mario and Luigi or Mario RPG style. But it's got more of a pixel-based art style than like Bug Fables or Paper Mario. So kind of a neat little blending of things we've seen before, but an interesting enough project to keep an eye on. Just like Alkahest, we don't have a release date or window for Codex Eternal Eclipse, other than they're planning to release it on PC, at least at first. And then the last bit of moderate news here that we have is, of course, also coming out within the next week. We have the official release of the next game from Hoyoverse, Zenless Zone Zero. So we've had a couple of different beta. I forget if they were closed or open, but pre-release opportunities for people to play this game. So there's a lot of gameplay footage from those opportunities up online. The full release of the game is coming out on July 4th, and Hoyoverse has kind of detailed all the things that are coming out with the launch, stuff that's new that people who played the pre-release have not had access to. And also, in a paragraph that kind of makes me remember what sort of game this is, they talk about all the different generous in-game rewards that you can earn if you play and keep up with the story starting from the release on July 4th. So I don't know if we have anyone on staff that's going to dive into Zenless Zone Zero on top of
I'll actually
Genshin
check
and
it out.
Scenario.
I don't know about you, Chow, but I actually kind of want to check this out. And the weirdest thing that makes me consider
Is it the Street
checking this
Fighter
out.
collab?
So it's not. So that's one of it, but it's not actually a proper collab, right? It's not. They're not putting Street Fighter characters in there. They had like the developer roundtable, speaking with so fuck, what was their names? It was the producer Shuhei Matsumoto and director Takayuki Nakayama, which is they're the main two heads of Street Fighter 6 right now, and we'll get into that a little bit because I think it's a really interesting discussion about that. But also they had this pre-release broadcast not too long ago that has I know that's kind of like a silly thing to say, but one of the first things they said like during this pre-release, like one of the changes they're gonna add from the closed beta test to the full release, they're actually gonna have a skip button in a Hoyoverse game, Shao.
You
You
know
have a skip button.
that would be wonderful because I don't want to read through 10 hours on how to get a passport to go to a different island in Genshin.
It's one of those things. It's like, okay, like why are you playing an RPG if you won't pay attention to the dialogue or the story? And it's like, dude, the Genshin and the Honkai Star Rail like dialogue and character interaction sometimes just wants to make me like fucking explode.
Sometimes it's like the character just ramble about pointless things. It's like it'll be
yeah.
like, this thing could be done in 2 sentences, but the guy spoke like 4 paragraphs about those 2 sentences. Really,
Like the reason I'm still playing Wuthering Waves and having it like enjoying myself is because I can actually play the game without having to like skip and mash through fucking dialogue just to get to the game, because like I'll do my best to like, okay, what's happening in this scene, what are they trying to establish. Once I understand that, I don't give a fuck about what they have to say because because a lot of the dialogue is dry, a lot of like the delivery is like whatever, and I'm just like, okay, if there's a skip and I can get to like the fun part of the game for me, which is the gameplay, fantastic. If I have to like mash through like a fucking button for 10 minutes to get to that, like in previous Hoyoverse games, then like it's already a hard sell for me. So them saying, hey, we'll have like a skip button because we know that like different players want to enjoy the game in different ways. They value different things about the game. So we'll just have a skip button. It's like, okay, fantastic. You actually kind of already have made the case of like, oh, okay, I'll try this game because you're actually gonna let me like play the game immediately if you'll like without having to mash through like dialogue that may or may not be interesting, because they have to make the case for me. They have to meet me on like, okay, I will give your characters and your dialogue a shot, but if you cannot make the case for it after like 40 to 50 minutes of why I should pay attention, I am skipping the fuck out of it. Like I will give you that time, but if you can't make the case, then I don't care.
I never hit the skip button, but the thing is, if you give me a very boring and bad story, I'll rant about it.
Yeah.
Which is basically me all the time, right? It's
Yeah.
like I never want to skip anything because in case I might miss something important, but 99% of the thing is I never miss anything important because the dialogue is so bad and pointless most of the time.
That's why I'm wondering is, I'm like, I don't give a fuck like that. Like there'll be like scenes sometimes that are unskippable, which are like annoying, but then there'll be like some scenes that are unskippable that like, hey, there's some cool shit going on. Like in the recent patch for it, there's like a really cool action scene for like an upcoming character, and now I'm just like, man, they really made the case for this character. Maybe I should go pull on them. in a few weeks. Fuck, you know, just that's the intended thing for the developers, but they made their case.
I think it's a trap of like Chinese writing in general. They'd like to spend too much time ramble about pointless things.
I can't do it. I try my best. I kind of understand like what they're doing because it's like a very cultural thing, and I'm trying to be respectful of that. But I just feel like I can't. I'm not built for Chinese storytelling, man.
I watched this one Wuxia thing. It was like about this guy like that had a duel with his like stepbrother because of power struggles. But instead, they wasted like 10 episodes sitting in this island discussing how they should fight his stepbrother. I'm like,
That's the
they
thing
just
about Chinese storytelling that I can't do it.
can they just move on and fight the stepbrother already? I don't care about this.
God damn it.
I'm pretty sure
Uh.
I've said this before, but I kind of felt the same way in Wandering Sword, where
Yeah.
they like over explain every like martial arts technique in that game, which I get is part of the style, but they'll spend like literally like 4 paragraphs on like, imagine you are like a flower in the meadow and the sun is overhead, and if
Oh,
you cut through
God.
the stalk, and it's just like you can master this new technique and your breathing is like a cloud or something. It's like, okay.
Like I feel bad, man, because I get it. I know why they do this, but I can't. I don't know what I have to do to like to meet them halfway on that. It's like,
Chinese writer keep falling for that stupid trap. Maybe
like
we're just been whitewashed.
they gave me like 20 paragraphs of like the history of the land. I'm like, oh no.
The history of the land
Yeah,
and the war.
especially when it's like you get like there's like an interactable in the world. It's like a text log, and it's like fucking 7 pages long about like, the most mundane shit. I'm like, this is so fucking over. I can't do this. Oh, so them saying that, hey, Zenless Zone Zero will have a skip it. I'm like, all right, okay. I'll try. Like the gameplay is like it's interesting to me. They showed
Yeah,
off
I
more and
don't care
more.
about the gameplay, so I don't know. Maybe I'll just go in and roll, and that's
Yeah,
it. But I don't think I
yeah.
will be invested in it. The
We'll
only thing I
see.
would like about this thing is the main character. How if you play one of them, it doesn't erase the other one out of existence. If you play like in I don't know Genshin, you pick one of the twins, the other twins go missing and becomes like an antagonist in the story. And
Oh, I believe, yeah. So what? So get me if I'm wrong. From what I understand, like the two like selectable protagonists in the game, they're like siblings that live in the same house but they have separate rooms. So
yeah,
like,
and it's like just because you pick the one of them doesn't erase the other person out of the story, right?
it's also really interesting because like the main character that you choose, they're not a playable character. They're more of a means to like go around like the open zone like hub base and so forth. I don't exactly know how relevant they are to the overall story because like the characters that you're playing are like separate characters called agents, and they're like the secret operatives or agent or characters that like go into like these dangerous zones called like hollow zones or something like that. But the main character itself, they don't participate in combat directly, which is unlike every previous your Genshin. You have the Traveler who participates, the Trailblazer participates.
I prefer that because I feel like the main characters in a lot of gacha games are like completely useless. It's like your shittiest character, and that you don't end up using it, and it doesn't feel kind of relevant because in the story they're like super powerful, and it just kind of ruins all the immersion when they just suck in gameplay. You know what I'm saying?
But that Wuthering Waves is great because your character, once they get their Havoc form, they become one of the best characters in the game. So they're like fucking literally like one of your strongest characters in the game. And Wuthering Waves is your main character because their new form that you get after the main storyline is like it's really fucking overpowered if you build them properly. They're like a nuker. So they're really stupid. They're
Yeah,
probably
like
people have confidently said it's like I think there's like one of the most like overpowered protagonists I've ever played like in any gacha game ever.
yeah, I prefer a protagonist to be broken, like overpowered,
Oh yeah, me too.
because they carry the story. It's like why shouldn't they be broken? If they are like just some random Joe, like I don't know Donnie from Fire Emblem, the farmer you picked up, it's like and he's leading the story. That makes no sense, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and then the prize, to shut off more characters, shut off more of the small changes. Like one of the things, like it's like these other characters, like that you can only roll with in-game currency that you obtain. You can't pay for it or anything. It's called like the bang boos. Like people were annoyed in previous betas of the game. Where first it was like 50-50 on like getting the desired bang boo, like in other previous Hoyoverse gacha games, and then in this post beta test 3, I think it was like 75-25, and then like in the final release there's like you just have a selector of like, hey, you can just like pick one that you want to roll, and then the next time you roll that rarity, it will be guaranteed for you right away.
Is it? Are they doing that as like a response to like Rivering Waves because of how they have like a guaranteed weapon banner kind of
I
thing?
think so. It might be that. I'm not exactly sure. Like, what I think, like from what I understand, like Bang Boos are like one of them, like more like they're like supporter characters that have like special effects. So they're not like characters and their weapons, but like, they are that like kind of almost separate weapon banner. Even though you can have like you can do other modes of the game to like build up weapons for your character. I believe they're still doing it traditional Hoyoverse style for like the actual character banners themselves in Zenless Zone Zero with the 50/50. So I think that's staying the same, but at least for that one other aspect of the game, they're allowing us to select. It's just nice, you know. I mean, and then of course they put in big, bold letters. You have like 100 pools, and you have like 80 pools for the Bang Boo Gacha. But of course, there's not going to be all served up front. It's going to be
Yeah, you
all
have to
like, hey,
grind for like
uh,
inside out the game before you get those 100 rolls.
yeah. So people like don't fall for the fucking Hoyoverse trap of like whenever they announce how many fucking rolls you're gonna get. It's like it's not gonna be all served to you right away. You're gonna have to like play
It's
through
a
hours and
trap
hours of
of
the
like
game.
real life. Okay, you go to the street, you buy some food. It says 90% off on the thing that's probably expired.
I mean, that's one way you can, yeah, you can compare it. So yeah, I mean, so I'll give it a try. Like I'm genuinely interested because I like the general like environment. And I don't really care much about the story, but I like the general like feel of the game, and like I'm interested to kind of just get my hands on like will I enjoy the action combat of the game. That's the reason why I kind of stuck with Wuthering Waves. Is like, hey, I really enjoyed the action combat of the game, and like now the new content and the character that was added, and like really enjoyed my enjoyment of that game like twice
Even
over.
more.
Like I really like even more. Like
Yeah,
it's
I
it's
would have switched to that game too if I didn't sunk too much into Genshin already. Right, that's kind of like my thing. It's like sunk cost fallacy is too high to switch over to a different game.
I get it. So we'll see. I mean, I'll give that a shot. I'm also giving another free to play game a shot, the first Descendant when that comes out, because that'll come out like a few days before, like in a few days actually. Some of my friends have like kind of convinced me, hey, give it a shot.
Like real
Oh,
question is, are you gonna go to play Uma Musume? That's announced too.
oh, I don't know, man. I'm thinking about it, but I'm like, it's
3.5 years behind, but they're not working with a certain cursed publisher that spells with C.
so for people who are listening, they're like, what the fuck is going on? So the quick backstory is like Psy Games finally announced that they are bringing over Musume Pretty Derby to the West for iOS and Android. It is single-handedly one of the hottest fucking games in Japan and other territories whenever it launched. And it just makes bank after bank. Like it performs very very well financially for them because of the type of the game it is. Where it's basically horse girls. Like these anime girls that have like horse tails and they actually race like horses. So like in the universe, instead of horses, it's horse girls.
I mean, the
And
title is literally translated as
no
Horse
one,
Girls.
yeah, no one rides them. Obviously, they don't have they don't have anyone on them on their back riding them, but they're like raced like it's like track and field almost. And the actual gameplay of the game is like you actually raise them like through. It's almost like a simulator game where you have like a routine for them. So you have to like frequently like check up on them daily, have them go through like exercises and activities to eventually get their stats high enough to like to participate in races. And then like there's a big competitive element to the game where there's like almost like a clan or guild war almost where like groups of people form like clans to like participate in events and rank well based on the performance of their horse girls. So there's a big competitive element of that game, and that's kind of the big money sink in the game. It's like, hey, you're doing this for the group to like rank well to get better rewards and stuff like that. So I don't know, man. It seems like an abyss that I'm like it's like I can understand like the appeal of the game, but it's like I don't know if I don't know, man. It's
I
kind
think
of
that
scary.
appeals for like the Hong Kong Asian Democratic. If I
Oh yeah, they love that shit, dude. Like
They
it's like
love
it's
horse
like
racing there.
yeah,
It's like a religion, man. Horse gambling
yeah.
over there, and so I could see it being big over there. But over here, it's like nobody talks about horse
Oh
bettings,
yeah,
right?
no. And,
So
yeah, and of course all the horse girls in the game
No
like
one in
have
our
like
social class.
yeah, but even like the horse girls in the game have like the real like names of real horses like Golden Week or like Silent
gold
Suzuka
ship.
or Gold Ship. I forgot the other main.
I don't even remember
Um,
gold ship. Yes,
yeah,
she always talks shit about you in like everything that you play. Like you play Grand Blue, she makes cameo, she talks shit about you. You play Grand Blue fighting game, she talks shit when you lose.
So you pretty much if there's like a real life horse like that actually participates in horse racing, there's a good enough chance that like they have a horse girl equivalent of them with their same name, and then and so forth. So anyway, yeah. So that's the Zenless Zone Zero and a little bit of Uma Musume. The main thing that's like kind of makes this game appealing for me to give it a shot is there was this roundtable that barely debuted like a few hours ago as of the time of this recording this podcast. And they spoke to Matsumoto and Nakayama-san from the Street Fighter 6 the main figureheads for Street Fighter 6, talking about just general like for almost 36 minutes about just pure game design. It's not to like announce new game content or new anything. It's just pure game design of like how action and fighting games like exist in the space, and like thinking about the roots of Street Fighter. Where remember Street Fighter 2 that was made by like the Final Fight devs, and in the set and like they talk about like just the roots of the fighting game genre of like being a type of action game, and how they adapted the action game like the belt action scrollers of that era into a fighting game and so forth, and how that and how the evolution of both action and fighting games as genres over time had to like start thinking about like they're no longer things that were like simple in the past are more complicated to like modern players, like a half circle or a quarter circle motion for Hadouken, like or just like simple like combo links that were like came more easily to players in that niche genre, but it came so like very easily to them compared to now, where like since it has an expanded market, an extended user base, and like many people around the world play video games more than ever. There's a larger range of like skill types, and you have to somehow find ways to lower like the skill floor to like make those types of games more accessible, like input wise and game design wise, where you have to kind of like almost like hold their hand to like introduce systems more intuitively and ease them more into like the genre before you start like getting to the content that would appeal traditionally to like hardcore action and fighting game users. So like thinking about like Street Fighter 6 for example, where they have like these new systems like with drive impact and parry, and how those are like one button solutions of like offense and defense, right? And but like you can get deeper into those systems with things like drive rush, drive reversal, and like kind of setting up like stun routes that drive impact when the game when opponent is in burnout with the drive impact against their backs against the wall and so forth. And it was just like a really really cool conversation. I don't know what the response is. I'm sure a lot of people are complaining, hey, where's the collab characters, where's the announcement? For me, like I really like game design and like seeing very talented developers, especially like seeing like the producer of the Zenless Zone Zero, Zhenyu Li, having this opportunity to talk about like their upcoming game, and like because the producer of Zenless is like apparently like a very big fighting game player, also has put a lot of hours into Street Fighter, and just like having that background like at least establishes some sort of line of credibility to me of like, okay, I will meet you halfway and giving this game a shot, because you're very
You convinced
honest
them.
and transparent about like your inspirations, and even going out like to meet with these very talented game developers of like a very highly respected fighting game series to me, and like just releasing this video just sheerly about game design, and like and more about like the history between Matsumoto and Nakayama-san's career at Capcom, like, and getting more insight about that, like learning about how Nakayama like joined Capcom like in the early 2000s, wanting to like since he went to school and studied about like developing arcade games, but then when he got to Capcom was already like, oh, we're already going away from arcade games, during that time frame, and then like I was like just like learning like, fuck, that sucks. You look up and you want to like you landed your dream job, working for Capcom, only to like join them and find out, oh, we're not making the games that you wanted to make, and
That
so
sounds like a
forth like
horror
that.
story for anybody's dream, to be honest.
It gets into even more like how Nakayama had to like basically he left Capcom, but then a supervisor or previous contact like reached out to him at the Tokyo Game Show to go reapply for Capcom because they were in the making a new fighting game, And then so he rejoined Capcom after that, only to find out that I believe that initial fighting game that he was being told about was like canned or pushed back, and then he had to go save Street Fighter V when he got back to Capcom after Ono, for years kind of really
Mismanaged
botched
that one. Yeah.
mismanaged. So it's like Nakayama and Matsumoto had like really fascinating stories to share about like their time at Capcom, and it's like, and you don't really hear about that until like this roundtable. It's like, what the fuck? That's awesome. That's really cool to see. And I'm like, okay, devs, Zenless devs, you gave me that. I will give you my time of day. Like
I
that's
really love hearing like behind the scenes thing, but people don't
oh,
really talk about much, or they
oh
just
yeah.
talk about like the positive things that happen in game development. Never like the bads. Like I don't know, like when you watch, I don't know, Metal Gear Solid 4, there's like a development video when you buy
Mhm.
like the limited edition of it,
Yeah.
and there's like a lot of arguments behind like the staff because
Oh
one
yeah, I
person
have
wants
that.
to like,
I have the limited
yeah,
edition of GS4, and like that's one of my favorite things about like limited editions. Like when they used to have like documentary, like separate documentary discs about the development of the game in those limited editions. Those are the things that like I love. Like if you could give me
On
like
this
that,
note, um,
yeah,
sorry, I thought you were finished.
that's
I
okay.
apologize.
No, go for it. Go for it.
I think it was in the last week. Harada from the Tekken
Mhm.
team put out
Yes,
like a
yeah.
lengthy tweet. And I'm not a big fighting game person, so I was just like, oh, this is just a tweet about fighting games. It's not my thing, you know? But
Mhm.
I was actually told, like, no, you should read this. And basically, in a nutshell, what Harada was talking about was he was comparing Tekken and Soul Calibur and like why Tekken has been very successful and Soul Calibur has been struggling more so. I think Soul
Mhm.
Calibur is still a success, but it's not as big a success as Tekken.
Mhm.
And basically, Harada's post on Twitter or X or whatever it is talked about like Japanese studio culture and basically like how management roles work in terms of like what people do to get into management. And like basically the nutshell version, as I understand it, was that like the Tekken team years ago was sort of seen as like the secondary team, and that like
The
Harada
rebellious group.
would never be like management material. So they just left him there to do Tekken, while like the Soul Calibur guy who was in charge of Soul Calibur, basically there's a really high focus on just getting into management and
Mm.
basically, you know, doing everything you can to basically bounce around different positions just to bolster your management like resume to kind of move
Mhm.
on from that.
Yeah.
And they could never really like create like a solid leadership in that team because of that, whereas Tekken formed like a core unit that could basically grow and learn as a team, as a group, with Harada at the helm. And even since then, Harada has like some management positions or like some responsibilities, but still, they've kind of learned that like over time, maybe this sort of styling that they had, that they were running the Soul Calibur team through, just in the end was actually like hamstringing it. Read the post; it's a really good post about it all. So
Yeah,
Well,
the
there's a saying that's been interpreted a few ways, and I'm not the authority on this, so apologies if someone's more versed. But it's like stop promoting good engineers or whatever trade into bad managers.
yeah,
Basically, most people don't make good managers, but the way that most businesses are set up is that people who are good at their jobs are promoted eventually into management roles, and people who are very technically skilled or in a technical role or good artists even end up becoming managers, and some of them succeed, but often a lot of times you just feel the lack of the talent because your best talent was promoted out of being in the technical role. So it sounds like when you're describing Harada's discussion to me, it kind of reminds me of that.
the lengthy Harada development post on Twitter is like probably like the one instance in which having an unlimited characters for blue checkmark accounts, like having that feature is like a good thing. That's like the only time where a blue checkmark account with having unlimited characters for Twitter posts is like a good thing. Is like having those development stories out of nowhere for Harada. Just like and just respond. It's like it comes out of like just responding to like stupid comments that he gets from like users. He does this in response to people like saying dumb shit. It's like, okay, let me tell you about how it actually works
yeah.
in the
So the people were
industry.
asking
Yeah.
like, "Where's Soul Calibur?" Basically, So he responded to that.
It's like, all right, it's my lunch break. I have time to type, so let me lay it onto you. It's like, oh man, like Harada is so fucking cool for that.
Yeah, honestly, like Harada is one of the coolest people I've like met in this industry. Like I remember not this Summer Game Fest, obviously, but last Summer Game Fest, it actually overlapped with his birthday. And since Tekken 8 was coming out, like Bandai Namco basically had a huge mixer for everyone at last year's Summer Game Fest. It also doubled as like basically a birthday party for Harada, which was insane.
That's so sick. Yeah, so Harada definitely just like one of those old school developer veterans that just keeps on being a fucking badass in the industry, man. Just he's a real one. Like, despite how you feel about him over the years on like Tekken balance and like the quality of some Tekken releases, he is a fucking real one. Has been put through the ringer of just he knows.
I don't think he has done anything bad, in my opinion. I know people give him flack about the Tekken DLC, but he basically said that these are just like extra money because development's been expensive, really.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, like I just like him being like upfront and frank about like this is the state of the industry, this is how we work, and this is how we respond. And
there's a like a level of respect for like the fan base that shows, and it's like you can't help but like really kind of appreciate that respect is there, and it seems like people have been like reciprocating that respect in due kind, but it's just more shit like this in the industry, please.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah, man. I 100%. So yeah, shout outs to Harada, shout outs to Zhenyu Li, producer of Zenless Zone Zero, and of course shout outs to Matsumoto Nakayama-san of the Street Fighter 6 development team. Just like it's just so cool to see, just like this is such a fucking cool creators roundtable. I just really have a deep respect of like having the just almost the balls to just do it. Pretty much, I'm just like, hey, we're gonna upload this lengthy video. I was just talking about game design and history and career history and just the state of the industry, pretty much, and the market. And that's it. We're not announcing like gotcha goodies. We're not announcing collab characters. We're not actually announcing anything coming to your game. We're just talking. You're just here to chill out and talk about just game design. Fuck, that's so cool. but also I'm just like that's so me too. That's awesome. That's just like appealing to like I don't know how many people would enjoy it, but I'm just like for me that's my shit.
We do have a couple other just very small updates that we'll just probably rattle right through to wrap up this podcast. We have an update coming over the summer, two of them actually, for Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis. I used to be able to speak to this directly, but I no longer play. Just too many games on the plate. So coming in early July, they are adding kind of a card game called Line Strike, and this is apparently going to integrate into the creative space, which is the personal housing system. So basically just like a secondary objective that you can collect and play, et cetera, et cetera. And then later they're going to add in late July on the 31st, a armament called M.A.R.S, M-A-R-S, which stands for Multi-Role Arcs Reactive System. It's basically kind of like a mech suit, kind of like a Javelin from that one BioWare game, Anthem. And Phantasy Star Online 2, the base game, had a similar system called AIS, which I don't remember what it stands for. But basically, in some quests, in some roles, you would have access to a mech rather than your personal skills. It seems like the M.A.R.S system, which is the one in New Genesis, is more of something that you can toggle into. They say like every 9 minutes or so. It's kind of like a overdrive or something that you can do. I don't know the limitations of it. I haven't dug too deeply into the press release of when it's used and how often it's used and what the limitations are. But the trailer shows it basically just being very flashy and interesting in terms of like animations and such. But those seem like the two major updates for the game coming out in the summer.
Am I locking in for mechs, Brian?
We'll have to get with Kite to see how much of a
Okay.
mech itch that the M.A.R.S
All
system
right.
scratches.
All right.
Owlcat, we talked about on the previous podcast in August, the first DLC for Warhammer Rogue Trader is coming out, which is called Void Shadows. They've given a new trailer for it, as well as another like massive patch 1.2. And my experience with this patch is that I still have this game installed and not started, and it's like we need to download some number of gigs to your game. I'm like, oh, of course. And basically, it's just continuous patches like that I'm just like, this patch is the biggest update of the game so far, containing over 2,500 visible and internal changes, balance, localization, new items, cutscene animations, improved dialogue. And I'm like, okay, like if I'm only ever going to play through this game once, I'm glad that I'm just letting it sit on the burner and continue to cook, because they are continuing to support this game pretty heavily. And then, of
Just
course,
Yeah,
go ahead.
just a heads up that since during the Steam Summer Sale, obviously this podcast is being recorded. The Rogue Trader is on sale for 35% off right now, so it's about
Oh, that's pretty cool.
less than $33 a game. I hear it's a very lengthy game, so if you want
It is a lengthy game, and this patch notes are insane. I'll just post it in our little chat here. You can just open it up and scroll if you want. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot of things that are added or fixed. So yeah,
I mean,
so
yeah,
just
for
open
people.
it up and scroll.
Oh my god! I just saw like the how small my scroll bar was. Yeah, that's a lot. Holy shit! But yeah, so I might actually might pick it up. I don't know when I get around to playing it, but that seems like a good price for this game.
Yeah.
Less than 33
If I
bucks.
say it enough times, I will eventually play it. But I don't hold my word very often.
Uh,
And then the last thing we got is another update for Inazuma 11 Victory Road. The beta test for consoles, I guess consoles and PC, PlayStation and PC, will be launching in July. The Switch demo basically has already ended, and then those planning to play on PC or PS or
so
PlayStation.
it's weird. The Switch demo hasn't really ended. The Switch demo got delisted
Oh, okay.
like maybe a day or so ago. So you can know, like, if you're trying to look for it and you can't find it, it's already like you can't get it if you already didn't previously download it, but it'll officially end on September 30th. Like,
Oh, so
so
if you've
that's
already got it, you're good.
yeah. And
Oh,
I assume that's also going to be the same like end date for this upcoming PlayStation, and Steam beta test demo, where sometime during July it'll drop, and then at the end of September it'll end, and then supposedly have a release date of some sort. So I kind of want to try it on Steam. I didn't like the Switch performance, but I think the game itself is fascinating, and apparently like they released patch notes for it that added more content to the beta test, and also I'm just kind of curious to see how well the PC port is. So I think there's a really fascinating game. I don't know if I'm like I feel like I have to like spend some hours like actually truly learning like the ins and outs of it to like kind of wrap my head around it. But I think it's a really really cool game.
we have a couple sales updates here. Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, that we talked about a couple times this week and last week, has surpassed 5 million units sold.
That's a big number. I mean, when you think about Elden Ring, like last
Yeah.
figure we heard was like over 20 million. So you're talking about like maybe over 25% of the user base.
The last update we got on sales numbers for base game was 25 million.
Oh, okay. So that's somewhere like maybe over a fifth, which is still a huge number.
Yep.
Just coming back to it.
And that
So
was within less than a week, so it's like, yeah, just man, still crazy how well that game is sold.
it's kind of weird, just like
It's
the
just a cool
snap and then
5
a simple
mil.
5 million. Yeah. Just to think about how fucking big From Software has gotten. It's like, yeah, we're a multi-million-dollar company or seller now, and like we'll drop DLC, and it's like it just does even more millions, just like that. So congratulations to From Software and Bandai Namco for and congratulations to the people who played and beat the DLC before the patch.
You're better than the game journalists now.
Well, no, they're on
No,
par.
they're on par, yeah.
Yeah, they're not better. The
Didn't you
game
see the
journalists
VG 24/7 article? That was such a good headline.
Yeah. Meanwhile, congratulations to the game journalists who played that and reviewed this game and proved that they're better than the average gamer. Apparently,
People give
what
shit on
happened?
game journalists, but
What
it's to work
happened?
for RPG site. If you can beat me in a fighting game, surely you're better than a game journalist, right?
Okay, so like just think about this. So our reviewer is Junior, and Junior, when he reviews a game, he like, we don't tell him to do this. He just like no lifes it. He just like, all right, I'm gonna play this for the next 24 hours straight. He does that.
He
That's
did that with
Junior.
the Persona game. I mean,
Yes,
he
he did.
But he
He
bought
wasn't
it
even
and
reviewing
then
that. He just
patched
loves
that to me in
Persona.
less than a week. I'm like,
Yes.
what happened? It's like I played for 2 days straight. It's like, don't do that, man. It's bad for
Anyway,
your
my
health.
point is he got to the final boss of Erdtree before anyone else I knew, any other reviewer, and he said he beat his head against it for like 6 hours, and just like he couldn't look it up. he didn't know if he was missing something. No one else was there. He was just like by himself. Like, all right, gotta figure out this boss, and I have no assistance from anywhere. I just got to do it, and he did eventually.
Yeah.
So
no guides,
Yeah.
no patches that nerf or buff the player.
no helpful tips from anywhere. Right.
That's right. So, well, what a king, what a god. So, so people are complaining. I don't ever want to hear you talk about shit about game journalists ever again. It's over. And then your gamer cred card, it's over.
And then Stellar Blade has reached 1 million units sold.
That's a good amount for a brand new IP and coming from a studio that this is their first console game.
My opinion has been changed from it's good to fantastic. I enjoy it a lot more after.
Damn, that's a big change. What happened, Chow?
I feel it kind of delivered, and I know like people say it's like, oh yeah, the story's not good, but the side quests is actually okay. Like I think the side quests is great, and I feel like in the end, it's like the game is fun, and I think that's the most matter thing, right? It's fun,
Do
There's a lot of games.
do they have 30-minute cutscenes where they talk about the land and the history
No,
of the land?
I'm
Oh.
starting to like care less about plot these days because most of it just like mumbo jumbo or dialogue that doesn't really make sense. It's like I'm going to change the corruption of the world, blah 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 blah. It's like forget it. If you're not Senator Armstrong, I don't give a shit what you're talking about.
So that, I mean, there's just like a strong response to the game. People have generally really liked it. It's cool to see your opinion become more positive on it. Chad, they're continuing to support the game. Like they're adding more outfits for the main character and a few modes. They had like a roadmap, and then they also said they're working on an expansion and a sequel to this game. So those will come sometime in the future, obviously. But it's cool to see just early strong numbers from a brand new IP from a developer where there's their first console game.
I
Cool to
wonder how
see
long will
success for
because this game has actually been announced a long time ago. Remember when it's just called Project Eve? I think it was.
I
It was
assume
like 6 years ago. I think it was.
I assume it'll come in a more timely manner because they do have like a lot of existing art assets that they could reuse for it, and also they have like the game systems down as well, so they have a better feel of like what people like and dislike and what worked and didn't work of this title. They wouldn't like change it up the genre or anything. I imagine. I think it'll come out at a more timely rate. Obviously, game development still takes a lot of time, but it won't be like how long this game took out from like its very first announcement to up to release. Shift up.
Speaking of people no lifing things when they don't need to, Josh 2 has basically put together a guide for every single outfit available in
Stellar Blade.
Yeah.
Stellar Blade. I was like,
What
Eve
a
Blade,
king!
Scarlet
And
Blade.
there's no Josh
Yeah,
2 is the other Josh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, if you haven't listened to there's another Josh on staff, and it's also Josh T, so that's why we have to. Anyway, but including like a lot of them, like you play through the game on New Game Plus, and in the same locations where you find outfits, you get like alternate color variants, and he has basically detailed all of those as well, and like has a guide out with like 100 images. I don't know if it's 100, but several dozen images of all the outfits you can get, which is like one of the key like rewards or optional things you can get in Stellar Blade. So Josh was just a beast on that, and it's up on the site even if you're just interested in the amount of, because obviously filtering through to the top of social feeds are specific types of outfits, but if you want just what the whole list, all the things you can choose from, he's got it up on the site.
And I mean, a lot of games you don't get
a lot of them
anymore because you have to buy them.
Yeah.
So it's nice that you can just
and then you buy them, and they're just alternate colors of like now your hair is teal or whatever.
Yeah, they have a very old school approach, which I really appreciate. It's like, hey, just it's all unlockable.
I missed that in video games. Like I think it was like Dead or Alive 2. I think you beat the game once, you get a different costume, you do this again, and it's like, oh, more costumes. Like, God, when are games like that ever gonna be again?
Yeah. So hopefully Shift continues that philosophy with the sequel follow up stuff for this. So really cool, big W for the Korean game market, especially getting to consoles. The next one's just around the corner with the First Descendant. Those developers are also from Korea, and also they also like in previous interviews saying like we're cheering on for like the other developers in this space. So like they look at Stellar Blade, they're like they're cheering them on.
I wonder when we'll see Lies of P DLC.
Yeah,
happen.
Mm-hmm.
They
I mean,
teased
the
it.
lies of Alice? Is it Dwarfy?
It's
Was
lies of D, I guess.
it? Lies of T. Okay, well,
It
yeah.
reminds me of wasn't there a Yu-Gi-Oh card called Lord of D or something? So that'd be great. So yeah,
I feel it's like a common thing with like the industry these days. Like big gotcha maker companies start to like invest in console games, or other companies that wasn't doing too successful and like kind of branch out. Even side games did it like recently. They bought out like a kind of like Nitro Plus, was it? I
yeah,
think it
Nitro
was.
Plus, yes, yeah.
So
So
yeah, it's like, and they're like resurrecting some like their dead projects with it too.
hopefully, yeah, I would love to see what some of those projects are. Like I remember like that one-off spin-off or one-off thing that Side Games did of like basically doing like a remake or remaster of Zone of the Enders 2. It was like a very one-off thing out of
Oh, I'm sure
nowhere.
it's never going to happen now. I mean, after Navi tried to sue them, saying that they stole one of their gameplay systems.
Huh?
You remember?
Uh, which
There was
one
like
was that?
there was a time where like there was a lawsuit where Konami's trying to sue them, saying that they Uma Musume copied like some kind of powering up system from one of their like baseball gotcha game, and they're
Oh, I
like,
didn't know that. What the
and
fuck?
after that they're like, yeah, I don't think they're gonna work ever again.
That's weird. That's so yeah. Yeah. So cool stuff, and hopefully, I really hope that the first Descendant is successful. So I think it's an interesting blend of like Warframe and Destiny. And like the more I look into the game and like learn about stuff, I'm like, okay, this seems actually pretty cool. So I actually do want to give that a shot too. Man, I've become a free to play gamer, Chow. Like Wuthering Waves, I'm gonna give Zenless, and First Descendant a shot. These are all free to play games. What happened to me? Did I
No,
fall
what's the
off?
most funniest thing? I found
What?
this post in the Mobius channel. Someone called me, Chow is perfectly meta.
Wait, why? What did you do?
Yeah, clear one of the things like the earliest, and the first thing I use is like the most meta build, using it to clear it.
Dang.
And so they
You are
call me just, oh man,
you
what?
are you are a meta chaser. They're right. They're right. Whoever said that, they're right. You do chase meta. So yeah, I hope I like all of these games, but I also hope that like they're not too addicted to the point that I feel like I'm rotating between them. So it's kind of a weird paradox in front of me now.
And that kind of covers us for this episode of the Tetracast. So I will not be here next week. It's a weekend of July 4th, which is on the Thursday. So for us in America, people might be out and doing things. We don't know. Let's see what things we could potentially be talking about. I won't be
Well,
here,
Anime
but
Expo will be going on like as we are recording.
oh, okay. So both Josh and James will be there. Is that true?
No, James
No,
will be
just me.
there. Yeah, just
Oh,
James.
just James.
Yeah,
Josh will
Gotcha.
be probably doing PAX East or PAX West in a few
Yeah.
Oh, that's
months.
right. I
So,
guess Josh was there in the past. My brain autopiloted, and so like, yeah,
I,
you just show up there, right?
I'm,
Okay.
I'm no longer in California. If I was still in California, I'd go, but
Yeah, but
it's more of
Seattle's a
a
pretty yeah.
so PAX West is feasible though, right
Mhm.
nearby.
Anyhow, so we have Zenless Zone Zero coming out in the 4th. We've got Trails to Daybreak coming out in the 5th. Dawntrail officially comes out on the 2nd, though I think anyone who's planning to play it is already playing it. So maybe we'll talk about those. We'll see what else comes up. And I trust you guys to hold down the fort. I'm actually going to Denver Fan Expo, which is not, it's more of a comic book movie with some anime and video games, but not as much. But I haven't gone to that one before, so I'll just be out with some friends and I'll be back the week after. So
Are you looking forward to anything there that might show up, or like looking to like see any issues or a particular series to pick up there?
I'm not much into comic books. There's some voice actors and mostly like Western animation, but some anime voice actors. Like Jim Cummings is there.
Mhm.
Uh, l- let's see, there is Charles Martinet is there.
Oh,
Justin
okay, that's cool.
Briner.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so
I forgot that
there's
Charles Martinet. Like, yeah, he's like more of like he's like just traveling around to events now, just celebrating
yeah,
like
he's
Mario.
just like Nintendo ambassador.
Didn't
Yeah,
he have a
And then
voice
like
in the dub for like a dragon?
did he?
I,
I
I don't
I
want
know
don't
to say
remember.
yes. Let me
Eh,
see.
if you
I
know,
didn't.
let us know in the
I
comments,
I
or we
didn't
can
play it
just Google
dub.
it.
So admittedly, I
Yeah.
didn't play it dub. So that'd be really cool
Yeah,
if he did have a role in Like a Dragon. That'd be
yeah.
sick.
But one thing my friend group is really interested in seeing is it's late on Sunday, which is the last day of the con, but Don Bluth is going to be there, the animator behind like Secret Nim, All Dogs Go to Heaven,
A
Rockadoodle, like
Land Before Time.
yeah, that one, the
Oh
original one.
wow. Okay. Yeah.
So formative for all of us old guys that grew up in the
Yes.
90s. But
Oh, I'm
or
sorry. I
early
wasn't
90s.
thinking
But
of Charles Martinet. Excuse me. I was thinking of uh the voice the voice actor for Goofy. I forget his name. Not Mario.
Oh, gotcha.
Sorry, both like a cartoony voice you don't really think of.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
Bill
character.
Farmer.
Yeah.
Bill Farmer is who I was thinking
There.
of. He had a
Okay,
voice
cool.
in Like
There
a
you go.
Dragon. I'm sorry, but still.
I was like, whoa, really? Now I'm thinking,
Yeah,
like, man, why wasn't Goofy a party member in Like a Dragon? What the fuck?
Why wasn't Max a party member? I like his cooler son, not Goofy. Sorry.
So all of the reviews that we talked about are up on the site, rpgsite.net. That includes the Tsukihime remake review that Josh put up, the Destiny 2 Final Ship review. We have the interview for Avowed. We have the op-ed for Mobius on Fantasy, and everything else we'll talk about today is up on the site, rpgsite.net. You can find us on all the social media channels. Just search for RPG Site, and you should be able to find us. If you like this podcast, wherever you listen to us on, leave us a rating, leave us a comment. We'd like to see those. And some of us will be back next week on the next episode of the Tetracast. So until you hear from us next time, stay safe and take care. We'll talk to y'all later.
Later, everyone.
Day will break again.